Happy Thanksgiving, home theater nerds. If you're listening to the AV Rant Podcast or the HDTV Podcast, don't touch anything. You click the right podcast, but this is a new and expanded home theater universe that you are now part of, and this is the first, hopefully annual, Infinite Home Theater Podcast event. My name's DJ. I host the Brightside Home Theater Podcast, and sitting around this home theater Thanksgiving table with all the fixins, like a giant OLED TV, 4K projectors, multiple subwoofers, Sony PS5, Xbox X, and everyone's favorite, some 4K discs with Atmos DTS:X. For cranberry sauce, we have 3D Blu-rays, and filling the role of the green bean casserole, we have a helping of HDMI 2.1. Sitting here with me from the HT guys, we have Ara, the Woodman, Dadarian.
Hey, how's it going?
We have Braden, the podcasting multitasker, Russell.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
And from AV Rant, Tom, the man who puts the rant in AV Rant, Andrew.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And Lee, if you follow him on Twitter, the Trigger Man, Overstreet.
Hello, everyone.
And also from AV Rant, but pulling double duty as our MC, host, moderator, home theater, ticket taker, Rob, the nicest man in podcasting because he's Canadian, H.
Well, hello. Thank you very much for that very nice introduction, DJ.
You're welcome. And with that, I am going to pass the bucket of popcorn to him so we can get this thing going. Let's go.
Indeed. Yes. Welcome, everybody, to, we're going to call this Thankful on Infinite Podcasts. You know, it's the crossover event, all of the multiverse worlds colliding here on one podcast together to say how much we're thankful this year for everything that's happened in the home theater and audio-video world. We did have a listener of ours, Fred, give us an alternate title saying maybe we should call this AVers Assemble. You know, after all, we got to give credit to DJ. Everyone should know DJ is the man who proposed this after speaking with each of us individually on his own podcast. And so, yeah, there was an idea. A man had an idea. Maybe not 10 years in the making, but we are all here. We are all assembled, and we're going to have some fun. So, what I want to do is introduce the sort of concept that we came up with for this special crossover podcast, which is that each of our three podcasts focuses on a little bit of a different take, a little bit of a different slant approaching home theater and AV. The HT guys, they focus on features every single week, put together a really detailed, almost deep dive into a particular subject or a headline from that week. And their Thanksgiving episode traditionally has been what we are thankful for this year in regard to home theater and AV. So that is where we are going to start things this week. And no better person to start it off than the host of the HDTV and Home Theater Podcast and his co-host. We're talking, of course, about Ara Dadarian and Braden Russell. So Ara, what are you thankful for this year?
Hey, Rob, thank you very much for that great introduction. And I just want to say one thing, Tom. You look like and sound like Bosch. Have you ever watched that show Bosch on Amazon Prime?
I have not, but I will.
I'm telling you, it's like I'm looking at the main character in Bosch, and you sound just like him.
Well,
all right, so what I am thankful for, I recently purchased an ultra short throw projector, and Braden and I, the first time we saw one is at CES maybe 8 or 9 years ago. The thing was huge. And at the time, the price was about $150,000. I believe Sony put that out, Braden, or it could have been maybe a Chinese company. But regardless, I was able to purchase one for about $3,800, and it changed everything in my theater room because I had a traditional type of projector. It was a JVC, a 1080p, a beautiful projector. But I wanted 4K, I wanted HDR, and then to get that type of projector, I would have to pull wire back through the ceiling because of the 4K. And going that far, I would have to, maybe even use HDMI over Ethernet. But then this ultra short throw projector came up, fantastic looking picture, and it works in broad daylight. So I can actually watch content in my family room. I could watch football games, baseball games during broad daylight. It is what I am truly grateful for.
I had a question just before we move on to Braden's pick, because along with that projector, you do need the right type of screen, like particularly if what you're saying you're going to be using it in daylight. So I was curious what screen you actually went with to pair. It was the Optima, right? That you chose, the Cinema XP.
Yes,
one?
it was the Optima, and the screen I have is I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to look it up.
Was it Elite
But
screens that you went with?
No, it wasn't Elite screens. It was only about $650. And it was kind of cool when you look at from top down. Before I put it on the wall, it's black, but when you look from bottom up, it's white. So it's designed to reflect light that comes from below back at the viewing position.
That's cool.
Any light that comes from anywhere else just gets rejected, and that is why one of the reasons why it works during daytime. The other reason is being very close to the screen. You don't kind of lose the brightness. It's like the lumens, if you had the same number of lumens from the back of the room, it would kind of get washed out going across the room. But being so close to the screen, it allows all that brightness to reflect back at you. And if you give me a second here, I can look up the
well, while
the
you're
projector
doing
screen.
that, I'll ask
Well,
Braden. Braden, did you get a chance to ever see Ara's new projector in person, or has it been?
I haven't been over yet. No, every time we talk, Ara's like, "Man, you got to come over and check out the projector," and I just haven't had a chance to get over there yet. But it is on the list, and it's not because he didn't extend probably an infinite amount of invitations. It just hasn't happened yet. But no, I'm excited to go check it out.
Right
for
on.
sure.
DJ, sorry, I cut you off. You wanted to say something there.
Nope. No, I just said, I don't know what I said, but I'm good. I'm
Just
listening.
clearing his throat.
No?
That's all he does.
Yeah.
Yep,
I feel like I'm in the front.
Hey, I'm
front-
DJ. Don't forget about me. I'm DJ. This is like the AV Rant Podcast. DJ's got a question again.
You want to hear my subwoofer story?
No, I do not. Thank you.
They've heard mine.
Oh, yours is coming up. We know that. Well,
Tom's tired of mine.
why don't we hop right into Braden's pick then? Braden, what are you thankful for
What
this
am I
year?
thankful for? I mean, the obvious one is sitting around hanging out with you guys, right? I mean, this is the first time that we've done this, so thankful for this whole thing being pulled together. And for the HT guys listeners out there that were a little bit caught off guard by the fact that we didn't start the show normally, we are welcoming you into like a greater, wider, bigger experience. And people who haven't heard us before, hopefully you don't tune out just because of something stupid that I say. But what am I thankful for? So this year, 2020, I have been somewhat a nomadic, or my tribe has been somewhat nomadic, moving around from house to house. So I had to land on Roku as what I'm thankful for, because taking the Roku streaming stick, or actually a couple of them, around from every house that we ended up having to stay in allowed us to basically take all of our content with us. As long as the house that we were in had Wi-Fi, all of my apps were there, everything was there. Just plug the Roku streaming stick into the back of the TV, and it's almost like I could take my home theater around with me. Of course, I would complain about the quality of the gear in the homes that we were staying in, but at least the apps were there, and I was signed in, and I had all my content. So I loved Roku, and trust me, like the equipment that you find in a traditional or a typical home out there that's for rent, what do they call the Airbnb homes for rent, is not great equipment. So taking your own Roku,
Tom, you're
with you at
familiar with
least
that, right?
allows you to have a little bit of home as you cruise around. So 2020 Roku was my thing.
Nice.
Yeah, Braden, I'm with you. I've been moving around a lot because of the renovations we've had to do in our kitchen, and took a Chromecast with us that it was just been sitting in the box, never used it, sat in the box. And then we started having to go to these different places, and you're right. It's just amazing to be able to plug it in and connect it to your phone again, and suddenly, boom, all your apps are there. Everything's connected. It does make things a lot easier. I agree 100%.
And I got to ask you, Braden, while you're over at any of these Airbnb places that you stayed, did you resist the urge to change the settings on their TV, or was that just an insurmountable downside that had to be corrected before you were able to watch your Roku?
I tweaked all the settings on all the TVs,
Yes.
man.
I never hesitate.
All of them.
Very nice. So,
And I didn't even ask for permission. I just did it, man. That's how rebellious I was feeling.
honestly, if you just set the
Excellent.
picture mode to like movie or cinema, which they're probably never using, they'll never even know.
Yeah.
You just put it back to dynamic before you leave, and they're none the wiser. So, Ara, I'll give you the opportunity. I'm not sure. You've been researching away your own screen choice. Has anything come up yet, or shall we?
Yeah, actually, it wasn't Elite. It was Elite AEON. How do you say that? Eon ALR screen. So that's what it was.
All right. Yeah,
I mean, it was either that or you were multitasking. So
I am multitasking. Yes, I am. That's what we do, Braden. You know,
that's what we do.
That's what we do.
That was like when I heard that. So if you guys don't know, the AV Rant guys, last week, Braden was doing something and Ara was telling a story and he kind of made a joke, but Braden just kept doing whatever he was doing. And then Ara called him on it, which I was dying. I'm at work. I'm listening. I am dying laughing because I'm like, that's like podcasting 101. Don't throw your partner under the bus. But he totally threw him under the bus. But you guys had already been making jokes all day anyway.
No, I didn't throw him under the bus. He was disrespecting me.
Oh, man.
I can't tell you my other podcast.
Here's the deal. I wasn't even multitasking, though. I just didn't get the joke.
He just didn't think you were funny. That's the big problem there. Is that
it was like crickets, and I'm like, oh, man.
Once you've been podcasting for 15 years and you're the elder statesman in that experience, you're allowed to break the rules, DJ.
We are like an old married couple.
Yeah.
Yep.
I listen to my other podcast that I do with my buddy just to hear back what he said half the time, and I'm commenting on it. Because I'm like doing something in the background and he'll be commenting on a comic book and I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I'll be halfway through my response going, is this even right?
Well,
there it goes both ways. There have been times Braden says something and I will literally say the exact same thing and he's like,
right.
Dude, yeah, I just said
exactly.
that.
Oh, yeah. You're all experiencing the same thing that happens on radio shows, I can promise you. If you're listening to a radio show, they're doing the same thing.
You're multitasking.
Well, now that we've had a few words from DJ, it is DJ's turn. Normally, if this were the HT guys' Thanksgiving episode, it'd be them, bouncing back and forth, picking multiple things that they're thankful for. But we've got 6 people on this podcast. We're all going to weigh in with at least one pick, and it's DJ's turn. So, Brightside Home Theater, 2020 has been a big year for you. What have you been thankful for in that home theater of yours?
Well, I took this question as overall, so I said projectors. That to me is the number one thing that I'm thankful for, going back to my roots in the 80s and looking at those Runco projectors and dreaming of these things that were so far outpriced for anybody. So back then it was, if you had a 32-inch TV, that was considered home theater. And now what we have with projectors just in general, bringing that real movie theater experience into the home. I can't tell you how many times I've told people, like, they're in the market to get a projector and they're like, what should I do? Tell me your budget, whatever, and just get whatever, the biggest thing you can get. And then we'll upgrade from there. I'll start them off with something good, but there's nothing like walking into a room and seeing like a 100-inch screen, 110-inch screen or bigger. That is going to blow everybody away. And what they've done with projectors, like Ara was saying with the, short throws, and now it's the sky's the limit with that. And as Rob and I talked about a few weeks ago, maybe someday the cinemas will actually have the panels. Mm-hmm. And when that's the case, then it'll be cheaper for us at home to do the same thing on our walls. But for right now, to get that real cinema experience, there's nothing like a giant, giant screen.
Yeah, and there's been some really nice advancements just in the past year, getting frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping added to a few models from JVC, LG, and Sony. So even on the HDR front, we're starting to get really, really nice images from projectors. Screen prices have come down from the days that DJ was talking about when he was looking at the Runco. So the whole package altogether really makes a whole lot of sense. Can't get a flat panel that's over 100 inches in size for like $4,000, which still a lot of money, but compared to what we were looking at in the past. And now at some point, we intend for all of us to try and actually see each other in person. We don't know when that's going to be, hopefully sooner than later, but one of these days. And I'm going to be very curious, DJ, what you think of if you're able to get a look at something like what Ara has, an ultra short throw projector in a not totally pitch black room. I mean, for all of us, it'd be a fun experience, but yeah. I'm
I
interested.
think that just means, Ara, I think Rob just invited everybody over to your house.
That's what happened.
So next one of these is at Ara's house.
Next year,
Honestly,
Thanksgiving at Ara's. So
Honestly,
that
I
is not a problem.
I thought you guys would be the best first location, the HT guys, because you guys are the closest together. Everybody else is spread out around the country.
that's right.
So we
You're
don't want to
all
find a
welcome.
central location like in Kansas or Oklahoma where we all go to in the middle.
No, because the weather in SoCal is always nice.
That
It
is also
is.
true.
It is. Yes.
That would
And
work
I have a
nice.
lot of bourbon.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Well, let's see. By my count, we've got 1, 2, 3 people who use projectors in their houses. Tom's got a projector, Ara's got a projector, DJ's got a projector, but then we've got Lee and myself, Rob, and we've got Braden. We're all stuck in flat panel land for the time being, aren't we? So it's a pretty balanced panel we've got here as far as weighing in on that.
Haha, panel.
See what you did there.
I
Nice.
did. I like puns, and so does Lee, because we all know that Lee is fond of that, and it's his turn now. So Lee, for people who might not be familiar with him, on AV Rant, Tom and I try to get together every week, but every once in a while, one of us can't make it, and so Lee is our steadfast, standby pinch hitter. He bails us out almost every single time, sometimes with like literally half an hour's notice, and the man is ready to jump
Just
on a microphone.
running into my office, turning on the computer as fast as I can.
I know the
Yes.
feeling.
Yeah.
Oh man, I do apologize. Yes,
Don't.
the texts and the tweets fly out furiously sometimes from AV Rant land.
Right.
But yes, Lee, we're going to give you the opportunity to be the first speaker from AV Rant. What have you been thankful for in 2020 in your home theater?
Well, hey, first of all, I just want to say I'm thankful for this. This is fun, doing this kind of podcast with you guys. And I'm also very excited. I've been listening to Ara and Braden for a long time. And so even though I know Tom and Rob really well now, I don't know them. And so my brain thinks of them as like famous. You know,
That's
like oh
absolutely
wow,
nowhere near the truth.
it's Ara and Braden. Look, everyone, and you guys. For
Imagine
some
my
reason,
feeling.
Yeah, right. Just you guys look like I pictured you. I'm really proud of my brain for just inventing. Yeah, that's how you look in my head. It's great.
I didn't picture the
All right, well,
handlebar
before you-
mustache on.
Before you
Braden.
go on, Lee, I got to tell you a story.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had to go and get a medical procedure from a doctor. These are things that happen when you get in your 50s. So imagine
I'm
which,
there. Yeah.
Imagine
Oh, yeah.
which medical procedure this was. So it's the first time I'm meeting.
Thank you for that.
I'm meeting
Thank
this doctor, and he
Yeah.
says, "Your name sounds familiar." I go, "Yeah, it's probably interesting because I don't have a very common name." And he says, "Do you do a podcast?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And so the guy who pretty much did the procedure knew me already. And
That must have been an
I'm there
interesting
for
selfie he took there.
I'm there for a consultation, and he's asking me about home theater stuff that he wants to put in his house.
Right on.
You guys are.
It's funny, man. A few years ago, Ara couldn't make it on the show for some reason, so I had a couple of my boys fill in, and they went to school. And the next day, a bunch of their friends were coming up to him, going, "Hey, is your dad do a podcast? Because my dad said he thinks he heard you on a podcast yesterday." So yeah, it's pretty
I
wild.
remember that when the boys filled in.
Yeah.
So I literally have been listening to you guys. I know what TVs you like, and I know about Ara's woodworking and speaker building, so it's very fun. And supposedly I'm going to be on DJ's show
Very soon.
sometime soon. Okay,
It
great.
actually
That's
was
exa-
supposed to have
See-
happened, but things get in the way.
Oh man, we'll get there.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Eventually, I'll fulfill my potential as like America's podcast substitute, and I'll just be on as many as possible.
There you go.
But anyway, let's talk about the hardware. That if I don't say SVS subwoofer right here, then
You're
Tom and
fired.
Rob will murder me. Absolutely.
As many
I'll never
S's
be
as
on a-
there were in that, you left one off because there should
Should
have
I?
been an S at the end of that word subwoofer right there.
I did drink an adult beverage earlier. SVS subwoofers. Don't ask me to say the name. I think I have an SB 2000 Pro.
That is-
and I have two of them.
Two of them. That's right.
You
There
have
we
two
go.
of them. Yes, that's
My
correct.
goodness, that makes all the difference in the world. And I knew intellectually it would. Like, we had a whole episode where we talked about this, and I knew it would make a difference. But I didn't realize just how much better it'd make the whole experience and how much more realistic everything would sound. So if you're out there with just some big, boomy, tall tower speakers and you think, I don't really need a lot more bass, you need a lot more bass. So get a good quality subwoofer, absolutely. And OLEDs, LG OLEDs. That is the best TV there is, right? I mean, OLED, at least the panel technology, is as good as it gets. And as someone who, ever since the late 80s, hates a bad black level. I don't like a gray washed out picture. I never have, or when I'm taking pictures, even back when it was on film. So, I had a plasma before this and an OLED now, and a 65-inch screen with my face 9 feet away. That ain't bad. And it is reasonably affordable. We had to penny pinch a little bit to get there, but it's been wonderful. And then I wanted to mention like 2 rando little small things, because sometimes it's the little things, the convenience things that makes all the difference, either in a home theater or in your car or whatnot. The little USB port on the car stereo. I love that. Does that sound ridiculous? I don't like messing with Bluetooth so much and screwing with my phone while I'm in the car, but I take a little USB stick and I fill it up with whatever I want to listen to, pop that in there. I love it. I know it sounds ridiculous, but just having that, I'm thankful for that. And then finally, in my kitchen, I have 2 little Bluetooth speakers, and they're made by Kanto. They're the YU4 Kanto Bluetooth speakers, and they have a plethora of connections. I use them all the time. I listen to Spotify in there because we cook a lot. I'm standing in there a lot, and it's just been a blast. I didn't realize how much fun it would be to have quality speakers in there. I had little dinky computer speakers in there before, but those are wonderful. So, treat yourself, y'all. If you're listening somewhere unusual, get some good speakers and put them in there. So those are that's my list of hardware.
Very nice.
So I've got 2 SVS subwoofers sitting in my garage getting ready to be put in. I'm currently without a home theater, right? Because they're still trying to put the house back together. But yeah, there's 2 SB2000s sitting in the garage waiting to go in. So I can't wait.
You're going to love them. You're going to love them.
Honestly,
when Ara and I first met, we debated on whether or not the center channel or the subwoofer was more important in your home theater.
Tom,
That was one of our early audio debates. Do you remember that, Ara?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And I was against subwoofer. I thought if you had a full range speaker, you can get enough bass out of it. And then I saw the light.
Honestly, the very easy question amongst this panel will be, who here doesn't use SVS subwoofers? Because I think it's only one of us.
Who would that
Really?
Ara, you use an HSU, don't you?
I have SVS
You
as
have
well.
SVS as well? Okay. There you go.
All right.
In different
here we
rooms,
go.
mind you,
man.
in different rooms. I have 2 systems, one in my family room and one upstairs. The upstairs one, where the projector does have the HSU or a SU, and that sucker just rocks the house. The one downstairs, I didn't get the bigger subwoofer. I got their sealed subwoofer. Their smaller one is $500, but I added bass shakers to my couch, and that was a great hybrid. So I do have a little bit of actual bass, but then a lot more coming through the actual shaking of the couch.
Who's got the biggest SVS subwoofers? Is it moi? It might be me.
What do you have? Probably.
I got dual
You're just
PC13
flexing.
Ultras.
Ooh. Listen to
What would now
Rob.
be the 4000 series? It's
I have
that's the lineage.
PB2000s.
All right, I win, and I've got the smallest room.
He does have the smallest room as well.
And
Biggest
he's
subs
the
in the smallest room.
deafest.
Well,
So what do you have? Those turned up to 0.5?
the volume dial goes between 0 and 100, and they're at 4. So
So yeah,
I figure I've got
about
some
right.
headroom.
Yeah.
They should be okay. They
It's
should be
actually
safe.
less than 0.5.
Well, Tom Andry over here has been biting his tongue because there's been comments by Lee and there's a comment by the HT guys, and it's Tom's turn now. I don't know if he wants to address that first or just tell us immediately what he's thankful for.
No, first, it's, for those of you that don't listen to the podcast, welcome, and it's nice to meet all of you. I do want to say that Lee, as he sits there on his high horse, pontificating about the glory of subwoofers, I want to let you guys know it was at least 2 years of me berating him that that his monster Yamaha speakers were not going to be enough bass, and him arguing with me vehemently that I was wrong and I had no idea what I was talking about and they weren't just enough, and and to have him.
I don't know if I argued. I just said I thought it was
so
good
sweet
enough.
To hear this, it's like,
I know what he wants. Listen, guys, I know what he wants. He wants me to say it again. Tom, you were right.
Thank you. Can you
There's
do it with my
something
wife's
he wants.
face, please?
I thought in that podcast, you guys did a great job of holding the suspense on whether he was going to keep both. Because you held on to that, and it was like, for the longest time. And I'm doing my lawn, and I remember going, "Is he keeping both? He's got to keep both. You can't send one back." But you guys
like
dragged
that's a
that out
cliffhanger
perfectly,
in our
like
world.
a Hitchcock film.
That's right. That is Lee's review of his dual SVS SP2000 Pro subwoofers. If anybody would like to check it out, avrant.com.
Keeps you on the edge of your seat, right?
Oh, yeah.
Keep
That's right.
It's the longest commercial ever, but yes.
It's a 2-hour commercial. Yeah, our podcast goes on and on, guys. I'm sorry if you like to work out to a podcast, you're going to want to stretch ours out over a couple of sessions or risk getting
You're going to
very,
get
very
jacked
hurt.
if you work out to that podcast. Yeah.
All right, so things I'm thankful for as far as hardware is concerned. It's there's a lot out there to be thankful for. Since the HG guys have been doing this every year, they're kind of focusing on this year. I, on the other hand, since this is my first time, I'm going to take a little liberties and talk about some of the gear and things that are out there that have made the most impact on my HT or home theater and AV experience. And the first thing I would have to talk about, of course, would be sound absorbers or room treatments, wall panels, whatever you want to talk. First of all, they're very important. We talk about it all the time on our podcast about how important it is for your room to get treated. But for me personally, I decided when I got my first real system that I would do some panels, and I made the panels myself, and I am not very handy, and that still is true to this day. I'm still not very handy, but I decided to write an article about it and pitched over at audioholics.com. So I wrote a 2-part article called "The DIY Absorbers for the Less Than Handy Man," and I got that published over there, and that began my journey in the world of AV. And I wrote for Audioholics for 8 years, and it was a great experience. Loved being part of the industry. Met Ara and Braden at CES one year. I think I was so exhausted I couldn't even hardly open my eyes to look at you guys, but we did meet, and I was like, yeah, okay, guys, good. I'm gonna write some more, because we did like 2 hours of sleep and 22 hours of writing while we were at CES. So that is a very important part of my personal experience. But unfortunately, Braden kind of took one of mine, which was this idea of these streaming devices that you can take around. And of course, SVS subs and other subwoofers are also very important to me. But I think more important than anything else that's happened for me, and I think in AV, has been the Harman white paper. Now, that came out a couple of years ago, but it fundamentally changed, a couple rounded. It fundamentally changed how we understand how bass works in your room. And we went from, basically guessing and hoping and doing things like the subwoofer crawl, which we still suggest sometimes when you have a single subwoofer, but to understanding that if your room fits in within certain parameters, mathematically we can predict where the best place for your subwoofer is regardless. And it works because of math. And that right there fundamentally changed how I look at subwoofers, how I react to subwoofers, and how well they're implemented in rooms. And going back to what Ara and Braden were talking about when they were arguing about what's the most important speaker in your system, the subwoofer or the center channel. It's not the center channel, but at the time that they were, because we've been doing this for so long, Ara and Braden's been doing it even longer than I have, and at the time, that was a legitimate argument because we really didn't know how to integrate subwoofers. And if you place a subwoofer incorrectly, it can destroy your experience. It can really mess up how things sound in your home theater. And the fact that the Harman white paper came out and started to make these things clear to us, I think made the biggest difference as far as me really understanding that we're progressing. For so long, we've been arguing like, is a Denon warm or a Yamaha cold or whatever, these amplifier questions that seemed more subjective than objective. And here we had something that was objective, concrete, that we could hold on to and really improve people's home theaters substantively through the application of math. So that's the one I'm going to go with.
I mean, I still think the subwoofer crawl is fun in the same way that, hey, meet me on the 7th green at 11 o'clock at night, and that's when the sprinklers come on, is fun, right? Just imagining people crawling around in their theaters to find the right spot for the subwoofer. I just think it's fun. So,
I mean, and there's so much, there's so many like wives, I call them like AV wives' tales that are out there. The people have been saying it so long that they just keep saying it. Like, it's been on AVS forum for so long that people are like, oh yes, when you do the subwoofer crawl, play your favorite bass heavy track. And we're like, no, that's not really what you should do anymore. But we're all AV Rant does is try to make sure that people are getting the right information. I know you guys do the same thing, so it's good that we're all together and fighting the same good fight.
Well, I alluded to it earlier that I've got a very small room. It's approximately 11 feet by 12 feet. The ceiling isn't even a full 8 feet. It's the den in my apartment, and my apartment isn't that big. So naturally, once you have a room that size, the only logical way to think of how to proceed is to have a full 9.2.6 system, because anything less can't really cope with a room that size. It's got to be in there. So I'm really thankful this year that we've got some new pre-pros that have hit the market, as well as new AV receivers now that have brought the ability to get to 15 speakers and more than one subwoofer down to a price that is still expensive but not completely astronomical. It's no longer 5 figures like it used to be. So Monoprice's HTP1 is the first one. It's a $4,000 pre-pro, so you will need 15 external amplifiers and amps built into your subwoofers, as we would expect. But that really nailed a lot of things. I love that pre-pro. I wish I could own it right now. I got to save up a little bit for $4,000 US, me being a Canadian and the exchange rate and cross-border shipping. But what I love that they did there is normally it's difficult to upmix all of our content that is not already encoded as Atmos and DTS-X with objects that could potentially use all 15 speakers. If you want to upmix all of our 5.1 and 7.1 content, to actually do that into 15 speakers wasn't really possible. The Dolby Surround upmixer will never put any sound into front wides. There's some rumor that might be changing, but as we're saying this right now, it is the case. The Dolby Surround upmixer never put sound into front wides. And then the DTS Neural X upmixer was limited to 11 speakers total. It couldn't go beyond that. So now we've got DTS X Pro and the DTS Neural X Pro upmixer coming out. That should be able to expand to all 15 speakers. But Monoprice, before all of that, said, hey, we can upmix to 11. That's no problem. Why don't we just matrix the sounds that would go into the wides and matrix the sounds that would go into the top middle speakers above us? They did that in their own processing, and that for sure works. Don't have to wait for a firmware update. Don't have to rely on some, Dolby or DTS potentially upgrading things, and who knows if it'll really work until it does. They've got that processing right now. They also implemented Dirac really well, and something that Dirac doesn't have that I wish it had was curves of equal loudness, which is, if you're listening at full reference volume, no problem, but most of us turn the master volume dial down at least a little bit. And when you do, some sounds, particularly in the deep bass, can become inaudible or just not as loud as they really should be amongst the rest of the mix. So curves of equal loudness make sure that the proper equalization is applied, and they rolled their own. Again, because they're like, hey, Dirac doesn't have it built in, we'll roll our own. So along with that, I was really happy with Outlaw's new Model X 5000, or Model 5000X. Let's get the numbers and letters the right way around. That's bringing, XLR inputs to a 5-channel amplifier, 120 watts per channel, $750. It's usually over $1,000 for something like that. You gotta like it. And lastly, Anthem, brand new, just came out, their whole new lineup. They've got their MRX 1140 AV receiver now, can do 15 speakers and 2 independent subwoofers. So, pretty amazing that is out there. And being a Canadian, Anthem's a Canadian company. They gave us quite the price break. If you're down in the States, it's $3,700 for that AV receiver. It's $4,000 Canadian. I'm like, that's a heck of an exchange rate. It's pretty awesome. I might have to go for it.
Buy me one.
Nice.
While you're at it.
No,
Yeah.
Since it's
no,
so
Tom.
cheap.
Yeah.
And by the way, Rob will tell you it's not the center or the sub that's most important. It's the front wides.
Front wides. You know what? I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that Monoprice in some way hasn't shown up on a bunch of our Thanksgiving lists over the years. Monoprice is a phenomenal company. And they've been doing great things ever since, we just went there for, low price. I don't want to say cheap, but low price
Right.
cables all the way through what they have now. Yeah, Monoprice is awesome.
Yeah, and we're lucky. Monoprice is local to us. They have a warehouse. I believe it's in Rancho Cucamonga. And Braden and I were there one time. Or no, you know what? No, it was for
That's
Olivia.
a real place.
Remember?
Rancho
Yes, it sure
Cucamonga,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
I used to live right near there. I used to live in Claremont.
I lived in
Rancho
Cucamonga for
I
many
thought my
years.
dad was
Yeah.
kidding.
No, it's a real place.
Hey, gosh, that sounds like yet another reason we should all meet down in California one day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say until he came
You
out
know,
with
Rob,
Rancho
to go back to
Cucamonga.
what you're saying about prices, think about how much the prices have come down on everything. Braden and I usually around Christmas time will have a like our home theater in a box that we create the box instead of just buying the home theater in the box. For what I paid for my TV back in like 2004 or 5, whenever it was, I can get an entire home theater system with good products. Not just my first Yamaha home theater in a box system had plastic speakers, so that gives you an indication. And I was happy to have it. To be
Probably some
honest with you.
22 gauge wire thrown in there too, right?
Oh my goodness, it was terrible, but it was great too because I had surround and I was excited about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's what we get for the dollar now is incredible compared to what we used to spend.
Yeah.
Braden, your first enhanced definition TV, not even HD TV, that plasma you had, that I remember coming over and watching a baseball game at your house because ESPN was the only thing that had high definition at the time. I was amazed by it, and that wasn't even HD.
Yeah, it was 480p. And it was ridiculously expensive too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the
paid, like-
enhanced definition and Dolby Pro Logic 2, and I was like, my impetus for wanting all of that was the Nintendo GameCube, because you could optionally order some component video cables and output 480p with Dolby Pro Logic 2 audio, and that kicked everything off for me.
The good
Well,
old days.
speaking of cables, do you remember how many cables our systems used to have? Now we just have HDMI and that's it. I bought an Oppo Blu-ray player, and in order to get Dolby True HD, I had to run RCA cables out to the my receiver because that was the only thing that can decode it was the player itself. And I had just a rat's nest of wires back there, and now it's just some HDMI cables and power. That's it.
Does anyone
Even
here?
I still
guys.
manage to have a rat's nest. It doesn't make any difference how many.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what I do, it's always a
It
rat's
just keeps
nest.
happening. Yeah.
AV Rant guys, imagine how much longer your podcast would be if you were going over the properties of each individual input, whether you went with, composite, component, super video, digital. Be like, well,
when
and
this
every
podcast
listener
started, we did do
calling or
that.
writing in.
HDMI is bad enough these days. I mean,
Yeah.
well, who among us here though doesn't still have a box, probably a pretty sizable one somewhere that is filled with cables? I certainly have one in a closet.
I actually just got rid of a bunch.
I've got several.
You know,
How do
it's
you
I
get rid of
have
them? Do
a
you have to
whole-
e-waste? Do you have to e-waste recycle them, or how do you get rid of them?
Put them
Recycling
at
is
the bottom
good,
of the trash bin.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah, there's an
Trash
e-cycle
bin.
program
Ooh.
here. I have
I
a whole
have
closet
4
that still
boxes
has
in
my
my
old
garage.
radio stuff in it. So I could
right.
do a radio show if you hand me a transmitter. I've got a closet full of enough stuff to do that, including like a XLR snake cable where you can hook up 16 things in one bundled cable. Oh yeah, I know about those
I've
boxes.
got
Rat's
4
nest.
boxes in my garage. One is speaker cable. One is just HDMI cables. One is random video cables from years gone past, like huge long component video cables from like Blue Jeans, the ones that
Yep.
had like the massive
Oh, yeah.
garden hose thing,
Braiding.
and then the miscellaneous one, which is all the weird connectors and stuff I
And
had
when
to
you
buy
need a
over the
cable,
years
what
to
do you
test
do,
gear.
Tom?
Was that?
I said, and when you need a cable, what do you do?
Well,
Go
Amazon.
buy another one.
Order it on Amazon. Yeah.
more often than I would like to
question.
admit, I do that, but
So I have those 4 boxes, but they're just not organized that well. All 4 of them are miscellaneous cable boxes, right? Like, I'm just ripping
I just
through
let
them,
me
remember I
trying
ask
have
to
a
you
find
guys
the
fifth
right
box
one.
out there too.
Yeah.
I have a fifth
Do
one.
any
I
of you
5
have
boxes.
speaker cables where the sound has to go in one direction?
Well, those are the special ones. Don't worry.
not
Those are the good
speaker
ones.
cable. I do have an RCA.
I had a
remember-
friend buy those. I had a friend buy those with the arrows on it.
Yeah.
Do it this way, or it'll be ruined.
Or it'll come
I
out
The
remember
backwards.
electrons
Braden.
get really mad if they
The
go
sound
that
comes
way.
out in reverse, man. It's
Yeah,
all
that's
garbled,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, it's horrible.
That you'll hear all the devil messages on your music
Yep.
if you do it that way. You can flip your cables, or if you want to hear the Christian side.
We
Now,
had one
I
guy.
only, by the way, I just recently got rid of a drawer, a little plastic drawer that was nothing but IDE ribbon cables. If anybody works on computers,
Oh yeah, I remember those.
IDE ribbon
Yeah.
cables. So
Yeah.
I also used to fix computers for years. So I I do know about these.
This is a weird flex that we all are doing right now.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure what this is.
Oh yeah.
We're pack
Braden,
rats.
do you remember when
Let
we
me
first
show you
started
my
the
punch cards,
podcast?
guys. What's that?
Braden, when we first started the podcast, we bought a device so we could do recordings out in the field, and it was probably about a $400 or $500 device. And within about 6 months, it became obsolete because we could record on our iPhones.
That's right.
And iPhone quality was just as good, if not better, than that device did.
Yep.
And I still have the device. It just hasn't been used in probably 14 years.
Well, now that we have discussed what we've been thankful for hardware-wise in our theaters,
Nice segue.
we're going to transition. We're still going to stick with what we're thankful for, because that is the overarching theme of this episode coming out on Thanksgiving.
Yes.
It all makes sense. But DJ's podcast, the Bright Side Home Theater Podcast, if you're not familiar with it, what he does is he picks something that he has actually watched in his theater every single week, and basically breaks it down. He sometimes goes literally scene by scene to talk about things that he notices, the audio and video quality in particular, but also the movie as a whole and some behind the scenes stuff. He profiles people's theaters, listeners.
It's much more interesting than Rob's describing, just in case you're wondering. It's much better
Am I doing
than that.
that bad a job of it?
Actually, I thought that was more
It sounds like
interesting. I
Mr.
want to
Science
listen to
Theater
that one.
3000, right? He's just watching the movie and kind of like pop-up video while you know the podcast while you're
He
watching
goes
the movie.
through frame by frame and analyzes each frame.
I don't know if you guys are
Go
noticing.
along
This
with his
pixel
journey
looks
with
off to me.
DJ as he is slowly analyzing each frame. It's a 17-hour podcast twice a week.
Now, if you remember how Beavis and Butthead watched music videos, it's that.
Every time I tell somebody what it's about, like friends, they're like, "Oh, so like Mystery Science Theater 3000." I'm like, "Yes," but from a home theater perspective.
Well,
but
we
yeah,
are-
I get that a lot, Braden.
We are going to take his inspiration and roll right into what we're thankful for software-wise. These are the movies, TV shows, and or music albums that we've been thankful for this year. So, no better person to start off this segment. It's his segment, if we're being honest. DJ, sir, what have you been thankful for software-wise in 2020?
Well, I have to go with Star Wars. Anybody that's listening to my podcast knows it's Star Wars. And when I say Star Wars, I don't mean like the franchise. I mean A New Hope. And it's always called Star Wars. I saw it in the theater. My dad took me to see it. And ever since then, I've wanted to just recreate that night. That was the first movie he ever took me to. And then the nerd in me in the 80s took over, and I started to read up on it. A lot of the behind the scenes stuff and what George Lucas did, and then learning about how he changed the theater going experience and how he forced cinemas into getting the 70 millimeter. So, that you had to have Dolby Surround to get the 70 millimeter cut. And as we all know, like 95% of the population could care less between the 70 millimeter, the 35 millimeter, and watching it on their iPhone. They don't care. Mm-hmm. So, but for us, and for that small percentage, he forced that. And I think an argument can be made that he is the birth of home theater, because I think a lot of people are trying to recreate what we're getting in the theater, and him advancing that. It's just huge to me. And the first scene I'd like to touch. No, I'm just kidding.
And you'll notice in
off we
frame
go.
874 that
Right. If you'd pause it right here. No, but I always go for a scene. I always go that lightsaber scene when Luke lights that lightsaber for the first time. And that's not real. I broke it down last week. Well, as we're recording this, it was a few weeks ago as it comes out. But I broke it down, and there's some, you're in Obi-Wan's hut, which is like a clay cave. But you can hear in that scene, you hear all these electronics going. It sounds like ceiling fans, computer fans are going. And it wasn't until just then that I realized, I'm like, this is kind of crazy, because you're in a cave, but you're getting all of this technology going on in all of your surrounds and your overheads. But then, of course, Luke lights that lightsaber, and quite literally is the first time a lightsaber was lit on screen. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as a little kid, we made that noise in the playground. It's Lee's got his hands up. Yay! Yep.
Actors today
Oh, yeah.
who managed to get onto a Star Wars movie or TV show, they always tell a story of how they have to stop themselves, actively think and stop themselves from making the noise with their mouth when they're actually
Right.
waving a lightsaber on.
Does anybody remember Star Wars Kid?
Oh, yes.
Yes, of course.
100%. Yeah.
That was that guy making those sounds.
Early internet
Was that?
meme.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Wait a
yeah.
minute. Was that you, DJ?
No.
Early career as Star Wars kid.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nope.
That was
wasn't me.
so funny.
But yeah, so that to me is like that. I mean, it's literally why I'm here. It got me into home theater. It's the movie that anytime I get a new piece of equipment, it is the absolutely first movie that I'll play. I've actually had a case where I couldn't find it. I can't start. They're like, oh, you've got all these movies, just put some. I can't. It's like, gotta know yourself.
I think we can all agree that finally, Star Wars: A New Hope is truly complete now that we have McClunky. That finally,
Yeah.
we were all thinking it for the past 40, 50 years.
I'm never going to watch that.
That
I am never
just
watching it.
something was missing in that scene, and George finally got it in there before he sold it off to Disney. McClunky, it's complete. We all feel good about it.
Have you not seen the new cut, Tom?
I am not watching the new cut. No, I've got the original trilogy on VHS, and I'll watch
Yeah.
that before I watch that new cut.
It's
You
a
might
good.
be impressed.
It's an interesting observation you make, DJ, around Lucas being the grandfather of home theater, right? And I hadn't ever thought about that, but with his THX and
Yes.
certifications and everything else, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Between him and Spielberg, because Spielberg did the same thing with Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
He did for DTS though.
you're just
He,
teasing all kinds of things here, DJ. Because we're going from one Star Wars property to another. Lee has clued us in what his first pick's going to be, what he's been thankful for this year, and it's part of the Star Wars family, no question.
Oh yeah, Mandalorian. And what I put on the list is that it finally made Star Wars good again. Because I'm a fan of the first movie and the second, so I'm talking about New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And then I have quibbles with everything after that, right? And, just when you think it's going to be good, it gets stupid again. But Mandalorian, the first season blew me away. I'm 2 episodes into this second season. I'm slightly worried. Getting a little silly. We'll see what happens. Don't anybody spoil. I'm only 2 episodes in.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that set looks a little fake. We'll see what happens. But that first season especially just blew my mind. And of course, with the new subwoofers and the TV, it was a wonderful experience. Also for me, I'm a giant science nerd going way back, and the Cosmos series, which originally was Carl Sagan, and I own that on DVD. And now they've redone it. I love little nerdy science things, and it's got good audio, really good audio this season, by the way, if you tune in and watch Cosmos.
They're
What is
on
that,
to
Fox now?
Third season now? They got 3
Yes,
seasons
this is
left?
now
Yeah.
technically the 3rd season, second new season. And I don't know, I just was struck by the audio. So if you have a home theater and you like science nerdy things, it's so good. Also, I will say Hamilton on Disney Plus, because first of all, it makes my wife incredibly happy. And that's incredibly important. But also, I like history. I was a history minor in college and a fan of some rap music as well. So Hamilton, very, very good. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And then I like things like Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He researches and he's funny as hell. And that's my kind of thing. So there's the stuff. I've watched a lot of other things, but those are the first 4 that came.
Well, a couple of
Last
comments.
Week Tonight, that's HBO or what network
Last
is
Week
that
Tonight,
on?
that's HBO. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, a couple of comments on that, because Hamilton is significant not just for the content itself, but also the way it was distributed this year. It was intended to be a theatrical release. Don't have to tell anybody in the year 2020 in case somebody is watching this some far distant future. I think history will record that there was a little bit of an event going on in 2020 that kept all of us at home, kind of made it a case that there was no better time to have a home theater. And here comes Disney Plus, a relatively new streaming service this year, and Hamilton releasing on that was a significant event. Did that?
Yeah, how about that? 2 of my things were Disney Plus. I didn't really think about that. But yeah, the audio and video is impeccable, and Disney Plus must have a higher bit rate than others.
You know, while
it looks really good.
While
Disney owns all the content, so I think you'll be hard pressed to go through this list of software and not come up with something
Right.
Disney. But
Yeah, during the lockdown, when internet service providers and streaming providers were limiting the bandwidth they were setting out, there was a spell there where Hamilton was the only piece of content on Disney Plus still streaming in Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. They had clamped down on the bitrate on everything else and were reducing it, but Hamilton came out and they're like, "Yeah, this gets the full quality." So that was a
it's
nice
really,
thing to watch.
really good.
That
Really
time.
good.
Also wanted to mention on that second season of The Mandalorian, you pointed out how some of the sets are not looking quite as realistic as perhaps the first season.
Yeah.
This was one of the things where it's a little bit of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because when the first season came out, and they're using this amazing, gigantic LED screen with real-time rendering of the backgrounds, and so they're actually recording it. It's not green screen. The light is actually there. That's why the reflections off of his shiny chrome suit actually work. But they limited it to 200 nits. It's in Dolby Vision, but it maxed out at 200 nits. And there were people online saying, it's fake HDR because you're not using 1,000 nits. So this season, they bumped everything up to 400 nits plus, and now you can kind of see that the backgrounds aren't as realistic because they're just a little too bright. So, don't always call things out for, not going up in just sheer numbers. It's not always the best result.
True.
So DJ already alluded to this. Tom's favorite pick for software is a pretty
Sorry.
consistent thing as well. And steadfast pick for what he enjoys in his home theater.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff that I play over and over again in my home theater. There's a lot of movies that see a lot of repeats. Of course, Star Wars was very influential in my life. One of the first movies I ever saw more than once in the theater. I remember the first time we saw it, we arrived late. So it was back long enough ago, obviously, that we just stayed and watched the beginning of the next one. Yeah. Just stayed through the break before they would kick you out like they do now. But one of the most influential pieces of, software, media in my life, of course, was the original Jurassic Park released on VHS and widescreen. I've told this story before on other podcasts, but as well as my own, is what had happened was I was at home, I had bought it, I was watching it on my 28-inch, CRT, and had just finished it, and a friend of mine showed up and said, "Oh, what you got there?" And I said, "No, the widescreen of." "Oh, you should come watch it at our place." I'm like, "I just watched it." He goes, "No, man, you got to come watch it at our place." And they had a much bigger TV, but it was still CRT, so it's going to have been bigger than 36 inches. But they had surround sound, and a whole bunch of. They may not have had subwoofers. I think they did, but they worked. And this is in Southern California. There used to be a place called Good Guys or something like
Good Guys,
that.
yeah.
Good Guys. They worked there, so they got all their equipment on discount. So they had tower speakers and subwoofers and surround sound, and I was like completely blown away. And that moment started my long trek into home theater. So it's not too hard to for me at least to recognize where I got my start. But there's other things that have also made a big influence on me. Diana Krall, her music. It's not something that I would normally listen to myself. It's not my, I like jazz and I like female vocalists, but her attention to detail and other artists of her ilk who have that attention to detail as far as how things are recorded and making sure you get that really pristine recording is it's a niche thing these days because now people are more worried about bit rates and stuff as if that indicates quality. But she's more worried about actually getting very good quality. And those artists that do that, I think, are keeping alive a tradition that we all need to respect and support. Blue Man Group is a good thing. Something I just personally enjoy, and it's something that I can get other people to watch with me in order to have them experience surround sound music. So I have some DTS recordings from them and Blu-ray recordings from them that are also very, very good. For testing purposes, one of the bands that has made the most impact on me has been Yellow. And you don't know who Yellow is because no one would purposely listen to this music. It's terrible. But the song Oh Yeah from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Dun, dun, oh yeah. That song? That's Yellow. Okay, and that is the most singable song they have. Okay, everything else is just weird, but it has all these pans and weird things in this 2-channel music that you're able to do a lot of testing with. So, like, you'll go to somebody's house and they're like, "Oh, you want to listen to some music?" I'm like, "Yeah, I brought a CD," and I stick it in. They're like, "Why are we listening to this?" I'm like, "Shh." It's 14 seconds in. There's a pan. I just gotta listen to this pan real quick, and we'll see whether or not your speakers suck. They're like, wait, what? So, that's an important one for me. And kind of echo what Braden said earlier, about having the streaming services that you can take around with you. Netflix. I was there when, I got the discs and they started streaming, and I had a device that I had in for testing for audioholics that allowed me to attach to get Netflix into my home theater. And it was one of the only ways you could do it back then, other than hooking up a computer to it. And it was awful. I mean, it was just not good. There wasn't very much stuff on it, and nothing that was on it you would want to watch. But they stuck with it, and here we are today with competing streaming services, and us talking about bit rates and what's got Atmos and what has Dolby Vision and all that stuff. And when I know Ara and Braden will remember people asking us over and over again, do you think they're ever going to be able to stream high def? Do you think they're ever going to be able to stream these things? And I know what you guys said, but I kept saying it's just compression rates. Once they get the compression rates down, once they figure out the codecs to get this stuff out and to get our faster internets to your house, yeah, they're going to be able to do it. And here we are, and they've done it, and it's completely changed everything. And thank God they did it before COVID, because man, this would have been it was hard enough. But without Netflix, I don't know how I would have made it through COVID. And lastly, I'm going to say I want to thank personally Professional Bull Riding, the PBR. Because when I got my first plasma in for review, the only channel that was really showing good HD,
right? It was HDNet.
Was PBR, man. It was unbelievable, man. You could smell the bull. It was insane. Like, when you get your first HDTV and you're like, it looks 3D, I can't believe it. And I sat there and watched so much PBR. I knew all the riders' names. I knew who the good and the bad bulls were. I knew everything. I haven't watched it since, but it was so good for those couple of months that I had that TV in for review. So I want to thank PBR personally for really introducing 1080p to me and making me understand just how good it could look. So thank you.
For us, it was Insectia on HDNet. Remember, Braden, that guy with the bugs?
Yeah, HDNet and Discovery HD, I think, were the two. Yep. Yeah, right. And I mean, he was not built for high def close-ups, but they made some high def close-ups with that guy that were, exciting.
All right, Tom, this is for you. See, hang on. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
Is.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Something went quiet.
Watch out. Content match.
Right.
Content match.
If that gets copyright stricken on YouTube, man, that is an algorithm
the
right
bots
there.
have gotten us this time for sure.
I do have to ask, in light of the recent price increases at Netflix, is anybody here planning to cancel or downgrade? Everybody holding on? I see a shaking head from DJ.
Not at all. No.
Nah, not yet, but it is getting a little annoying.
Yeah.
But, I guess you got to pay for all that content.
Right.
I know you are, Rob, though, right?
Well,
I thought that was the line you said, right?
I want to draw a line in the sand because for me, Netflix is worth $15 a month. Again, Canadian, maybe I'm being picky because exchange rate, it's only literally $1 more than the American price, and the exchange rate would make it higher than that. But I've drawn the line that that's what it's worth. And then when getting 4K and HDR and Atmos was only $1 more than that, I was like, okay, I can stomach that. And when it was $2 more than that, I was like, all right, I'll begrudgingly do it. It's still closer to 15 than 20. But now it's going to be $19 a month Canadian to get 4K HDR and Atmos. And I'm like, that's too close to $20. And if they gave me an option of, instead of 4 screens, only 1 screen or 2 screens, and I could still keep 4K HDR and Atmos for, $17, I'd be on it. But they only got the 3 tiers. So, I don't want to downgrade to HD only. I want the 4K HDR.
I think the price is great because my mom's paying for that one. So I think the price is wonderful. We pay for Hulu and HBO.
This explains so much about you, Lee. It really does. Thank you for this
Family
insight.
sticks together, Tom. We're helping each other.
I've said
Lee's in his mom's basement. Everybody heard it here
That's
first.
right, yeah.
There you go.
nice. I've said I think Netflix, it makes it the way they shoot their original content and put it out in HDR. I think they shoot it purposefully for HDR. They have parameters set in place to give you that dynamic picture when you go to watch it at home. So you don't want to go down. You don't want to downgrade because
they're
everybody in this room
consistent.
here, everybody in this room here would probably say, if their original content wasn't that dynamic, we wouldn't care because I'll take that in 1080p because all their movies, we probably already own them. So if we want to see them if you want to see it in the highest quality, you're going to pull out the disc. But their original content, I can't tell you how many times we've commented on whether it's the Atmos sound that they, like the beginning of Six Underground is just insane. It's 20 minutes of just, it's a roller coaster ride of sound. It's a blast. But Dracula, I think, what was it, Dracula? The picture on that was crazy. It was just such a good picture. But all of their stuff, I swear they give out a parameter so that they know how to shoot a scene in HDR.
They
for streaming purposes
put a lot into their mastering and really gave their artists the mandate and the equipment and the budget to do it properly. So that's why I don't want to give it up. I'm like, it's the battle.
Didn't I
they
read
know,
that-
right? That's what you're looking at. That $1, is that enough to really push me over the edge and say I'm going to get rid of everything that Netflix gives me for that $1 or not? Right? So they just keep pushing it because they know even if you cancel, you say that one breaks it. There's going to be a little bit of time, and then the next Tiger King or something comes up, and you're like, all right, I'm sorry.
that one didn't get me.
I think it might just have to become the rotation. I have them 5 or 6 months out of the year, but not the entire year, something like that.
Yeah.
Rob, what they say, the first one is free.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely the case. Well, to finish off the AV Rant side of things, since we had Lee and Tom, it's now my turn. I'm Rob, in case somebody's listening for the first time. And I haven't really said who the heck I am, even though I'm talking a lot. So my picks for software, I want to mention Star Trek Lower Decks. A little bit like Lee saying, hey, Star Wars is finally good again. I'm like, hey, Star Trek is finally good again. A very different slant. It's animated. It's exceedingly fast-paced. The dialogue, they are tripping over their words to say everything that's in the script, but it's humorous. It is all fan service. The crew, the cast that is on that show are essentially, major Star Trek nerds in Star Trek. So it's just been very enjoyable, and so I'm happy that that's there. CBS All Access, which is actually available in Canada. A lot of streaming services aren't. Hulu isn't, Vudu isn't. But CBS All Access is. However, I watch it on Crave because we have a service here in Canada called Crave that gets pretty much everything that's on HBO Max and Hulu and CBS All Access. So that's how I've been watching that and enjoying it. I did want to mention, amongst all this stuff, some humor was much needed this year. So I wanted to call out a very silly Will Ferrell movie, which is a Netflix original, and that is the Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga.
I thought that was on there because you actually like Eurovision. I'm like, I like Eurovision fine. I was just surprised you liked it so much.
I will admit I didn't really know Eurovision. I have not ever watched it, certainly not a whole season. I might have seen a performance here or there on YouTube, but that was kind of it. This has brought attention to the Eurovision Song Contest, which is a real thing, but this, of course, is a fictionalized version. Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams. And honestly, I mean, it is very silly. It is not to be taken seriously whatsoever. But Ya Ya Ding Dong is definitely worth it and should win an Oscar. And so, Eurovision Song Contest on Netflix. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to Evil, which is a network show. It's on CBS. Remember those? Remember broadcast television networks? Evil is a show that I really, really liked last year. And out of all the shows that were new last year, almost everything, even the ones that got renewed before the pandemic, got canceled after they were not able to start production on time. Evil is like the one show left standing, and I'm very glad that it's still around because I very much enjoy that show.
Yeah, my wife and I like that one too. That's a good show.
Tom doesn't.
So
like
did
it.
you watch?
He's trying to be
Did you
convinced.
watch Picard? As far as Star Trek goes,
I did watch Picard. The first episode of Picard was good, and then not so much.
Okay. All right. So
I actually
you still have
enjoyed
to
it.
wait
I don't-
for
I'm
Lower
not a
Decks
Star Trek guy.
for Star Trek to get good again. Huh?
That's my personal opinion. Yeah, DJ's just saying there that he enjoyed Picard, but it wasn't entirely my cup of tea. So it's time to roll back around where we're doing a rolling order here as we go through each of the segments. So it's finally Ara's time to say what he is enjoying and thankful for in 2020 software-wise.
All right, a few things. First, day and date movie releases. The pandemic kind of forced this issue. Braden and I have been talking about this for quite some time on the show, and we see the theater experience is going to change in the future. Even before the pandemic, we thought that. It just, when you have the theaters that we have in our houses, I have better audio than most of the theaters in the, out there. Not the high-end ones, but a lot of people don't watch in those high-end ones. You just go to a multiplex, and you might end up in a room that just doesn't have very good audio. So I'm excited about this. A couple movies came out early and were available only online, but now you have movies in the theaters and online at the same time. So I'm very excited about that going forward. What do you guys think? Excited about it, or am I the only one out here on this?
Oh, no. I used to swear at you guys because I was so against that idea. And
really?
like you said, you've been saying it for a long time, and I really enjoy going to the theater, or I should say, I really enjoyed going to the theater. But this pandemic and everything that's happened, I've totally swung around to you guys' side because I'm like, you know what? I feel bad for the theater owners, but as everybody in this podcast has talked about, they need to do something to up their game to get people back in.
3D
not
is not
just
it.
to make. What's that?
3D is not it. That's not the
Agreed.
solution.
No,
Stop
you're right.
talking
You're
about
right.
it. Stop trying to make us watch it. It's not 3D.
I really like it though.
But that's-
I really do.
But you know what's funny is 3D is something the studio would try to do to get you to go back to the theater. We need the theater owners, the theaters, to make us want to come back into their building. And I think it's like, and both of you guys' podcasts have said this. It's like they need to create better concessions, not just the pricing and stuff, but just create a better atmosphere, or, kick people out if they're loud, if they're obnoxious. And I mean,
Yeah.
I totally have come around to you guys' line of thinking.
They have
because
those,
I'm like,
Lee. That's a different
Not
kind
here.
of movie.
Yeah, no,
Not
that's
here.
That's a different kind of movie,
Oh,
though. Right?
not
no,
the little booths that you rent by the
Hey,
hour.
you know what you do in your private time is your thing, Lee. I'm not going to
That's
judge.
a totally different show.
If we are in favor,
Lee, I was going to ask you what that curtain is behind you, but now I'm not.
Now we know.
Would you
Picking on
like me to
me.
reveal what's behind? I can pull. Oh my God!
sorry, Braden, you wanted to say?
So, no, I was going to say, I mean, I think, with Hamilton coming up, and then Disney Plus is going to release the next Pixar movie on Disney Plus, without even sending it to theaters. DJ, to your point, I love watching movies, but I hate going to the theater, right? I mean, and it used to be that I would go to the theater because that was the best place. Sometimes it was the only place, right, when the movies were out, or it was the best place to experience the movie. But everyone else talking and the noise and kids running around and your seat getting kicked, the experience of going to a movie theater is terrible. So if you can get the movies and a better audio video experience at home, I can't imagine why people would want to go back to a theater.
So
Did any of us put our money where our mouth is on that, though? Did any of us pay for Mulan? Or are we all just waiting
Yes,
for December?
Sure
we
did.
did in this house.
I voted with my wallet on that one.
Nice.
I did
Yeah,
not.
so did we.
How about that?
No, I'm Ara's probably old enough to remember, the time before VHS, because I remember when I was a kid and the Betamax VHS war was going on, and my parents would go rent a VHS or Betamax player and 4 movies and bring it home for the weekend, and that would be my birthday present, to sit there and be able to watch some movies, which mostly stunk because no one knew what anything was. There was no review system. So, I have gone, and I've said this for the last couple of years, I only go to the movies these days. Well, not anymore, but before COVID, I only went to the movies as a statement or a message to the studios. I want you to make more movies like this one. So I went to some of the first Avengers movies. I went to Wonder Woman. I went to Black Panther. I went to movies that were important, I thought, to say, hey, this is a movie I should support. I didn't necessarily enjoy myself while I was there, because at my house, I can press pause when I need to go to the bathroom, and I can tell my kids to get out if they're being too loud or cracking their knuckles or looking at their Facebook or whatever, right? I'm like, go to bed. You can't tell people to go to bed when you're in a movie theater. They throw you out. They get real mad. So I agree. The home experience is important. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know that we're going to see movie theaters go away. I would not be surprised, and we talked about this recently on our podcast, if a big player like Amazon or Apple or something like that went around and said, hey, all you Regal cinemas that are now empty, how would you like to sell to us so that we can do something innovative there? And we might see something really change within this something exciting that happen. And I see VR as part of it. I see a lot of different possibilities there. I don't know what it'll look like, but it's not going to be, sticky floors and popcorn and milk duds.
Imagine how I feel. I think everyone on this podcast right now has access to at least a really good theater. You all live in bigger cities than me. And here we have one theater, and it sucks. The IMAX screen is pretty good. Like, it's not even a very big IMAX screen, and it's pretty good. But the other theaters, they're never any good. Every time I go to a movie in this town, when I did go to movies, it was just like, oh, please be okay. Please be okay. Okay, is the sound okay? Is it okay? All right, it's decent. And great. Hopefully Mom will enjoy this movie I brought her to. But I've hated the theater in this town for so long, it just doesn't matter to me. I'll take it day and date if I have to.
Yeah. So I think what's going to happen is we will still have theaters. They're going to be very specialized. You're not going to have the big megaplexes anymore. What you're going to have is maybe 4 very high quality theaters that have good concessions, alcoholic drinks, and that kind of stuff. I think that's the future, but the rest of it is going to be at home. All right, so the next thing I'm happy about or thankful about are my listeners that drink with me and listen to music on Friday nights. I've been posting on Friday nights what I'm listening to and what I am drinking. And this is not just background music that you would just have on, say, an Echo or something like that. This is on high-quality speakers designed for stereo, not our home theater speakers necessarily. And I sit and just enjoy the music. I try and take it in and slow down. And some of our listeners have joined me in this, and they'll tweet up what they're listening to as well. So I appreciate them for that. And the last thing is I'm thankful for iTunes, Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, Netflix, etc., all these things, because there's so much incredible content out there in HDR, Dolby Vision, 4K. It makes our obsession with home theater fun. It gives us content. We don't have to go out and get a disc. It just comes to us. So I'm thankful for those services.
Well, yeah, thankful that those survived, even though we lost Quickster, but at least the streaming services survived.
Not just Quickster, Braden, we lost Quibi this year. R.I.P.
Quibi too. We lost a streaming service too. Yeah,
on the tombstone, Quibi 2020-2020. It's illustrious
Quibi. Quibi was kind of stillborn.
It's the smallest little headstone ever. It's very short.
Yeah.
Outside of Quibi, though, Braden, what were you thankful for in 2020? Even all the time you might have spent on that service.
So, first of all, let me just point out that when you guys were talking about the movies that you're thankful for, I do appreciate you rubbing in the fact that you all still have home theaters, because I don't, right? So I'm, watching on, just whatever random TV happens to be there. But kind of along the same lines as the Roku, and being thankful for the fact that I could take a Roku with me to any house. The over-the-top streaming TV services that we can get access to now, the Sling TVs, and I use YouTube TV right now, have fundamentally changed how we're able to consume content. And, we would go months back in the day when I had cable or satellite with nobody watching cable or satellite, right? Because the kids weren't into it, and, maybe they'd watch Disney Channel a little bit, but you can't turn it off and turn it back on. You can't decide, hey, I want to put a TV in a different room and just throw the TV in there and have it work. And we had a stretch when we could move back into the house, the master bedroom wasn't usable. So I had to kick the kids out of one of their rooms, and we were in their room. So I had to grab one of the TCL TVs and drag it in. They don't have a cable or TV in their room. But having streaming TV on that TCL meant I didn't have to get a cable box. Didn't have to figure out where the cable line was run to. The over-the-top streaming services. And then we had everything shut off because we weren't watching any live content. And then UEFA came back and they were playing soccer. So it took all of like 30 seconds to turn TV back on so we could watch that when it was on. It's just, the difference between when we had cable back in the day and having a 2-year contract and you couldn't do anything and then having to pay another $20 a month to get another room turned on versus now of just saying, hey, I'm going to go put my credit card in and I've got live TV. It's been awesome. And it's been phenomenal for, our ability to sort of consume whatever we wanted to consume. And we've been talking on our show for a long time of wanting to get to a la carte cable programming, basically just kind of go down the menu and say, I want these items and I don't want to have to pay for all this other junk that you're making me pay for. And we're getting really, really, really close to that, which I think is cool.
Yeah. That's a wonderful smattering of hardware and software that we have been thankful for this year, and that leads us into the AV Rant portion of the show, if we want to think of it that way. For anyone who might be listening to us from Brightside or listening to us from the HDTV and Home Theater Podcast and isn't familiar with AV Rant, the format of the show is some news and some updates at the top of the show, but then pretty much an hour and a half, sometimes more solid, of just question and answer. And so we couldn't do a 3-podcast show where we're going format by format without answering some listener questions. So we solicited some requested things that people would want to hear all 6 of us weigh in on, because this is their opportunity for that. This isn't going to be a normal every week or every month occurrence. So we wanted to select something that all 6 of us could weigh in on here. And we're going to start with a question that came from the AV Rant audience. This is our listener, Andrew L. And he asks, if someone is starting out with a very limited budget, where are the best places in a home theater to compromise or sacrifice, and where is it worth waiting and saving up? Why don't we start off, Braden, down in the bottom right square? If we're looking at the video, what are your thoughts on where do you compromise, where do you wait?
So my advice would be get something. Right? So don't wait on anything. If you don't have surround sound, scrape a few pennies together, dig through the cushions in the couch, get something, right? Because I would never say, wait until you can get the perfect surround sound before you buy surround sound. If you don't have surround sound, you need surround sound. If you don't have a subwoofer, get a subwoofer. If you can't afford an SVS, just get something. You need a sub. You need a center channel. So I would say as soon as you have at least one of everything, then you start focusing on where do I want to upgrade and what do I really want to put budget into. And I would say that I would recommend you put like your most budget is into speakers, because those are the things that last the longest. That's where your investment lasts the longest, and they change the least over time. So, instead of dropping a massive amount of money into a really, really expensive TV and then having really bad surround sound, that TV is going to be out of date in a couple years. You're better off putting a bunch of money into really good surround sound and then waiting up and getting the TV later. That would be my take.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. Leah, I saw you giving some thumbs up, so you are in agreement with at least some of that. What are you thinking?
Absolutely. Don't blow it out on the receiver. Like, that's almost the least important thing. Depending on your home theater setup, if you're starting out, get the 5.1 to start. Get just a very basic 5.1 receiver, but do buy good speakers, like Braden just said. But yeah, don't buy fancy cables. Buy the monoprice cables.
There you go.
We will all agree on that. Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Do not spend the money on cable.
But it's true that if you buy very good speakers, they do last a long time. My main speakers are now 20 years old. They sound great. Well, objectively great.
That's an interesting thing there. Is there a compromise then, perhaps? Because I think we are all in agreement that speakers hold their value, and if you spend good money there, that you are going to get a lot in return and keep them for a long time. But, Tom and I will sometimes give the advice that if you have a very limited budget, that getting 5 speakers immediately would really mean something that you are certainly going to replace the instant that you can. Would it possibly be better to start with one pair of really good speakers, start with that, with the knowledge that you might not even necessarily keep them as your front, left, right, but as you upgrade and replace them, they can become your surrounds, and that you sort of do things piecemeal over time, particularly with speakers, since we all agree getting good ones are worth it. Ara, maybe you can weigh in on that?
I would even go a little bit different than that. I would say buy a sound bar as a placeholder. Don't even buy cheap speakers that you're going to throw away. The sound bar will get you your left, center, right. And then, as Braden and Lee said, spend your money on speakers. I think we all unanimously agree that speakers are where you really spend your money. Speakers are where you spend your money. Then the next thing, I would spend a little bit more on the TV. I do agree with Braden that the TV will change, but you want something to enjoy. At least that is something that'll be pleasant for your eye. And with the sound bar, you'll hear the audio, but it'll, it's a good place to start. The receiver, you can get that later as well.
I mean, I think thankfully on the display side of things, I mean, these days, what you can get in like even a 75-inch size, honestly, is nowhere near the sort of price point it was even just 5 years ago, that you can get a genuinely large screen TV that is by no means a slouch. I mean, Braden's favorite brand, TCL. I mean, the one thing that I would sometimes say is maybe not go for the literally cheapest TCL that exists, the 3 series or the 4 series. I'm like, if you can get to the 5 series, all of a sudden you're at that sort of butter zone of you've got at least a full array backlight. It's not necessarily local dimming. It's got like 16 zones, so it's not really local dimming so much. But you can get to that point where you don't longer just have a strip of light along the bottom illuminating the whole screen, but you can get like a 65, 75-inch screen for under $1,000. To me, that's, I guess I can call that a compromise because, hey, if I had my druthers, I'd go grab an OLED or I'd have the space for a projector. But what you're getting, the value that you're getting in something like that, I think is pretty tremendous. So that to me is a very reasonable quote unquote compromise to make on the screen side. Tom, what are some thoughts?
Be careful if you're calling TCL a compromise, man. That might be fighting words.
I'm saying
right
the 5 series as a comparison.
I'm just messing with you, man. No,
I know.
Well, as anybody who's ever listened to the AV Rant podcast knows, I will always tell you that the surround back speakers are the most important speakers in your system. You should definitely start with them.
Start there and move your way forward. I like it.
That's right. You start the back and buy your way forward.
Right.
Okay? That's no other way to do it. Honestly, it's too often people come to us, and because our podcast is a Q&A only podcast, that's all we do is question and answer from our listeners. A lot of times people come to us almost feeling embarrassed to say, this is the stuff I have, and I don't want to know if I should get something, what can I do? Listen, we all started with a Frankenstein system. We all started with some pair of speakers that our uncle gave us, and then a receiver that was handed down from somebody that we got at a yard sale or something like that. It's okay. Start with what you have, and don't worry about, whether or not it's the best. And I think my biggest piece of advice here is not to worry too much about compromise. It's more to not fall down the rabbit hole. And as anybody who's ever shopped for an amplifier will tell you, that hole is deep, dark, and never ending. As you look and you think to yourself, I just need a small 2-channel amp for my overhead speakers. And you're like, well, if I'm going to get 2 channels, I might as well let them power the front speakers. But if I'm going to have the front speakers, I need a bigger amp. But if I'm going to do the front 2 speakers, I might as well do the front 3 speakers. And if I'm going to do the front 3 speakers, I might as well do the front 5, the 5 floor level speakers, But for not that much more, and pretty soon you're up to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for your amplifier. Right. You don't have to do that. You can contact any one of our podcasts and reach out and get some advice about what we think, and we'll try to put you, check where you're going and give you some advice that will help you get to a place that's reasonable and will get you some good sound and good video to begin with. Like Rob just said when we were talking about the TCL displays, TCL Vizio, they make good budget displays that are reasonably priced and good performing and are phenomenal. I mean, compared to like what we were talking about earlier, my parents got a 55-inch, 56-inch Samsung Plasma, and it was on sale for like $2,600. You can't even you can't, the prices we have now, $400, $500, $600, you can get an insanely good TV compared to what we were looking at that price point, just like Rob said 5 years ago. So you can get there. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Yes, you might start with your front two speakers because that's all you can afford right now. No, it's fine. You don't have to have surround sound right away. You don't have to, and this is coming from me, try not to everybody get too shocked. You don't have to have a subwoofer right away. You know, I know.
You're right, Tom, because
What? Wait a minute.
Hold on to Lee.
Wait. Am I also right?
No, you are still so
Could it
very,
be that
very
I'm
wrong.
also right?
You just,
He said at the beginning, Lee. You
the
were
line
It
years
was
is
later.
wrong.
the
You are
beginning
king,
for
Lee.
me for a long time.
it's the semantics. Tom is saying you don't have to get a subwoofer right away. You have to get two. So
Two.
that
That's
was-
right.
Right.
Misinterpretation. That's it.
So, just, I will tell you what I did. When I had my little Frankenstein system that was just good enough. I had a tiny subwoofer that was terrible. I had a one, surround speaker that had a ripped surround that I kept taping up. I had a Bose outdoor speaker as my center channel and two Panasonic speakers, my front left and right, that came from I don't know where. So, we all come from someplace. And while I had this terrible system, which was still better than what a lot of people had in their houses, I sat there with my little spreadsheet and I read all the little articles and I did all the cost benefit analysis and I changed my mind 700 times until my wife finally said, okay, I think we can probably afford a surround. And before she finished saying those words, it was ordered. I mean, I was ready to go. The cart was already full. I just had to press play. It was ready to go.
Well, would
so
we say
you'll be there.
All of us would be in agreement that if we're looking at what in our circles might be called a compromise, that stopping at 5 speakers, focusing on other things at that point. You put together the Frankenstein system, you get to 5.1, you get to a decent flat panel, 65 or 75 inches. But before you go expanding the number of speakers beyond 5, that perhaps that's the point where you start upgrading things that already exist, and then you can repurpose at that point.
Sure.
Are we all in agreement with that one, or anybody
Yes.
think different?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, for most rooms, 5.1 is all you're going to need.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Because
That's
I
all
mean, if
you
you've got a
can have.
dedicated theater, then go 7.1 with Atmos. But if you got just a family room, 5.1 is way more than you need.
Well, one thing that we haven't talked a lot about is the decor in the room, and that's something where I think DJ possibly excels beyond the rest of us, because that's been an equally important part in his home theater is the decor of the room. And for, I don't know, I mean, in my theater, it's 11 by 12 feet, and there's 11 speakers and 2 subs already in there. I don't have room for decor, but that's something I'd love to hear DJ weigh in on.
Well, that's where I would say skimp. You don't need that right away.
Compromise. Just don't compromise on snacks, right? Compromise on
Right.
decor,
Well,
but
I
not on
have that
snacks.
right at the front. I got the candy little thing right at the front. But that's a great point in that, to me, when I built my theater, the decor was something that I always had in mind, because I was trying to recreate. It sounds stupid because if you look at my theater, you'd never see that in a real movie theater. But I was trying to recreate that environment, and a fun environment. And I've been in a bunch of home theaters where they're just gear guys, and you go in and there's wires on the floor and the speakers are just like, they're just literally just drilled right into the ceiling. And once the lights go out, it rivals any home theater, but they don't care about the aesthetics. I have an art background. I care about this stuff. A lot of it is collectibles that I care about. But to get to kind of tie that decor idea into when people ask me this question, especially where it's like somebody asks you this question in particular, where can I skimp when I'm starting, or where can I save? It's people that are brand new at this and they don't have a clue like what they're in for, right? Maybe they know the words, like they don't even know how to pronounce Atmos, right?
Sure.
Atmos, whatever. And
Atoms?
I always say, you get a cheap receiver, and if you want to spend some money, do it on some neutral sounding speakers. I was led in the direction of NHT back in the 90s, and like Lee said, I just upgraded my front channel speakers from the 90s. So those things are over 25 years old, and I went with just the newer version of NHTs because that's your foundation if you're building a system, right? So that's going to blow you away. And you set up a 5.1 system or a 5 system to, like what Ara said, you don't really need the subwoofer right away, what Tom said
How
too.
about that?
But you don't need it right
You're
away
never
because
coming
you're
on
going
the
to
podcast again. It's never happening. All right, this is it. I hope
come
you were
on
enjoying
ours,
your
Lee.
moment in the sun
Okay.
because it's the end of that.
I'm going on HT, guys, and unhooking my subwoofers.
but you don't need the 5 channels going at once. Your head's going to be spinning, especially if you're new to this and you've had maybe just a sound bar or something, and now all of a sudden there's sounds coming from behind you, God forbid, Tom, and you're amazed by this, and it's just that's so much fun, and that's what snowballs that rabbit hole, like what Tom said, is because now you want to upgrade that. Well, how do I upgrade this part? And then you might be looking at your picture. And Tom, you don't even have 4K picture yet, right? You're
I do
still at
not.
1080p.
Yeah.
That you still have a big image that's impressive, and that gives you that environment. And, someday I'm sure you want to get to 4K like everybody does, and you'll get there. But that's part of that rabbit hole, that snowball. But just starting out, that's all you need is just that 5 channels.
Yeah,
Just
we
telling
believe in you, Tom.
having you pat me on the back like, oh, you'll get there, Tom.
You'll
Don't
get
worry,
there.
Tom. You'll
we
get there.
believe in you, man. We're here to
I
help.
love your
Right?
reason
So-
for not doing it, though. It's wiring.
It is wiring.
I know.
I totally get that. In fact, that's why I didn't upgrade my projector because of wiring.
Well, I've got
until
an
the ultra
HDMI
short
cable
throw
on my
came in.
wall that I'm sure is not going to carry 4K HDR.
Right.
It's just not gonna
Exactly.
do it.
I'll defend Tom. I'm lucky I got to see a movie in Tom's home theater. It looks great.
Yeah.
It's not
Oh, yeah.
lacking.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
no,
looks really nice.
1080p is still outstanding.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
DJ, you made a great point there. Is that you were trying to reproduce something or recreate an experience in your theater, and you had a plan for kind of what you wanted to build. And I don't know that a lot of people would actually do that. Like, where should I compromise? What should I go out and get? Do you have the full plan of what you want your eventual home theater to be? Right. And then you can look at, as I map from where I am now to how do I get there? What are the right pieces for me to upgrade? And then it's kind of like what we talk
Right.
about on our show. When you start with automation in your home, just put something in. Right. And then that'll give you the ideas of what else you want to go automate, and you kind of grow over time. If you have your home theater and you're watching and you're like, okay, well, I know that it can be better. Like my rear surrounds can be better. I'm just not getting everything I should be getting out of those rear surrounds. Then, that's what you want to go upgrade. Right. But, having that plan of kind of where do I want to go from here to there allows you to figure out, where should I compromise and what should I invest in?
To speak to
really good
DJ's
point.
Yeah.
point a little bit here, if you go from having just a TV to having a full surround at Dolby Atmos, double subwoofer, fully treated home theater, it's almost impossible to appreciate that. You don't.
Yeah.
You
know,
miss the
that's
fun.
Well, there's the fun, but there's also, when you go from stereo to surround, it's massive. It's this huge
Yeah.
difference, right? And then you add the subwoofer, and you're like, and your mind's completely blown. And for those of you that aren't in home theater, and then maybe this is the first time you've ever heard anybody talk about this stuff before, think about the time that you went from watching regular TV or VHS, and then you got your first DVD player, or you went from your CRT to an HD DVD or HDTV. That kind of mind-blowing, like, oh my god, I never could believe that anything could look this much better. That's what having surround versus stereo and having your first subwoofer experience is like. And being able to do that slowly allows you to know, okay, this is how much better this can be. Now how can I go back and start changing and making things even better than they were before?
It's so difficult to do it slowly today, though. Like
Yeah.
you show up and you can, like we've been talking about, you can buy a really pretty good TV and a surround sound system and a receiver and be ready to go. I guess I'm happy I'm the age I am in a way, because I got to kind of see it all happen over time. My first TV was a 27-inch, and I hooked it up to my rack stereo system that I bought at a department store and just built from there. So, but yeah, now you can, unless it's a really, really limited budget, you can just about get something that I can't think of like, what's going to match that experience of going from NTSC television to high def TV? What's going to match that experience of going old crappy stereo to good surround sound? What what's going to be like that ever again?
Go out there
couple
and
of
listen
subs.
to some electrostatic speakers, like some full
Okay.
full electrostatic speakers will do that to you. You'll
Yeah, but a good answer to the question though too, Tom, is to say just enjoy the journey. Right?
Right.
Don't worry about, what you need to compromise on or what you need to invest in. It's all a journey. We're all trying to make, better experiences at home. And like you said, the first time you turn around startled because something happened in your rear surround speakers and you weren't expecting sound to come from over there, and then you realize, oh wait, that's my surround sound. That experience of having that, your theater change from a room where you watch TV into a theater is fun, right? And there's no reason to skip any of those steps.
pausing the movie because you're not sure if it's raining inside or outside.
Outside.
Yeah.
Or
that's
the
always
knock
nice.
on the door or the telephone that came from the rear channel. Like, is that
Oh, yeah.
mine? Or is that in the movie? Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
Terminator 2. They do
Yeah.
that. But yeah, and it allows you to tinker too. Because if you start with all the channels, like Lee was saying, it's like you don't even know what you're probably had somebody install it. But if you just start slowly and you want to hear how many people boosted their rear channels when they first got 5.1 because they were like, I want to hear those louder. And it's like they were so cranked up that it sounded like a church in there because everything was echoing off the back wall. But that was the fun of it. And then you realize it's like, let's tone that down a little bit. And then I've had some experts come out to calibrate stuff and they're like, oh, they appreciate it when they come in and like your rear channels aren't blowing out the room and your TV isn't in vivid mode.
Right.
It's like, but you learn that stuff and it's just, that's the fun. Like you said, that's the journey, Braden, but it's also a never ending journey. I mean, every single one of us is still moving on to something else newer and better.
If it was ending, Braden and I would have stopped our podcast many years
Exactly.
ago.
When you're retired.
There has been enough to keep the podcast going. AV Rant as well has been around. We always shocked that we have enough questions going on to keep us going for 2 hours every week. So it's a pleasant surprise, but a surprise nonetheless that we have not answered every question that is out there. And to that end, the HD guys have selected a question, of course, as well for us to answer during this section. What is the question you have chosen? Whomever of the two of you would like to read it out there.
So this one's on me, or I don't even know if you know that I grabbed this question. So there was a list of questions to choose from, and I saw this one and thought, okay, this is cool. I'm going to throw it in. So Ara, this is like news to you as well. But the question came in from Jay and Gary and says, is there anything in our current home theaters that we regret including, or if we had the chance to do things over, what would we change? And this is almost like a part two to the question that we just answered and that we just talked about. And it's actually one of the questions that anytime I hire an engineer, one of the questions I ask in an interview is, tell me about a project that you worked on that didn't quite work out like you would have hoped, or if you had it to do over again, you'd do it differently. And I think as we look back on our home theaters and that journey that we've all been on, I guarantee there have been a bunch of things that I've done thinking, okay, this is going to be awesome. And then realize, yeah, that was a giant mistake, right? And then go out and do something else, right? I bought the big giant DVD carousel at one point and tried to, catalog all the discs in the DVD carousel and tried to have that whole system up and running. And I thought it was going to be awesome. And then realized a few months into it, it was a mess and a nightmare. And I never wanted to have anything to do with it ever again. I've made mistakes, but I think that's part of the fun. Right. And certainly, I tried to include some automation in my theater to turn lights on and off before that technology wasn't really ready for it. And that, pissed my wife off more than anything else. So yeah, I've made mistakes, but it's been fun. All of it's been fun.
I agree. There's really nothing that I regret. Like you said, it's a learning curve.
Oh, dude, I regret the DVD carousel. No, I'm not going to argue that one at all. That is a huge regret. That was money
There was a
wasted.
year, Braden and I went to CES and we saw the Kaleidoscape, and we wanted it desperately to have a Kaleidoscape. And so along the way, and it was so expensive, it was so far out of reach, there was no way we could afford it. So we tried to create our own Kaleidoscape. And I remember I started with this thing called DVDpedia, and it was a really cool interface. And you would catalog your DVDs, and then it would launch your DVD player, and it was clunky. That didn't work. And then there was Boxy, and Boxy worked pretty good, but not quite. And then I got to Plex, and Plex ended up giving me everything I ever wanted to compare with Kaleidoscape. But even then, I started moving away from Plex. Not that there was anything wrong with Plex, because it's still the best, But I started buying my movies on iTunes, and the Apple TV integration was so nice. I just pull it up in the Movies app on iTunes, and I was done with it. And we get a lot of grief that you guys are watching iTunes, the quality's not that good. And we always acknowledge on the show that the best is getting a UHD disc and watching it in full glory. But sometimes you have to compromise and go with something that's really good, not necessarily the best, but so convenient. And that's kind of where we are. So it was the journey, like Braden said. No regrets, just it was having fun along the way.
Well, your answer was a really good reminder, Ara, because I had an answer for what I've regretted in my theater, and I'm still going to give it because it's a big one. But I regret, now that you've mentioned it, all the Blu-rays and Ultra HD Blu-rays that I've purchased, I've never redeemed the codes for iTunes or the digital codes. I never bothered redeeming them because I'm like, I've got the disc. When am I ever going to watch the streaming version? But now everything on iTunes has been upgraded to 4K HDR and Atmos pretty much. I'm like, kind of would have been convenient if I had redeemed those expiring codes. So
I've got that beat. I let my kids redeem the codes, and I have no idea what account they redeemed them on. I have no clue where those discs, where those movies are stored. They're like, I don't know. We just plug them in. I'm like, geez.
But Rob's big regret is that over the years, I've spent a lot of money on home theater gear that has come and gone, and there's actually a whole heck of a lot of it that's just stored. I've never bothered to sell it off. Some things I just can't let go of, like that LG LH90 LCD TV that has no place in my home anymore, but no one else will appreciate it like I did, so I've got to hold on to it. But no, the big regret is that I think it was maybe 2013 was about the time where if I had really planned things right, I could have sold my apartment and put myself not in a great financial position, but might have been able to buy an actual detached house farther away than I want to live, but it might have been possible. But I was thinking, okay, the value of my apartment's going up this amount and blah, blah, blah. Didn't realize that the value of detached houses in the lower mainland area of British Columbia, Canada, would go exponentially higher than anything that I could ever own. So I am now in a position where purchasing a detached house individually is not really in the cards. And if you want a home theater upgrade, having a detached house is the biggest home theater upgrade you could possibly have. And I very much regret that I did not play the financial game properly and did not climb the property ladder at the sort of what might be the only opportunity I would have had in my area.
You can always move to Manitoba.
That is definitely more affordable.
I do have one. I just now thought of one regret I have over time in home
not
theater.
Listening to
I
me,
wish I
know.
hadn't
Go
tried.
Not having a subwoofer. How much time
Not
did
having
you
a
spend?
sub. And that was a lot of years, and I should have jumped on that. But waiting, I did get two very good ones. But no, multiple times over the years, I tried to have like a Windows computer be a home theater sort of computer.
Yeah.
I've hooked a lot of computers to television starting in the 90s, and if I'm looking back, every time it was a giant waste of time.
Yeah,
it never worked well. It never looked good. It was clunky, and you had a keyboard on the couch, and it was just stupid. I don't know. Over and over, I don't know why I kept trying it, but
Nice.
maybe one day there'll be a way to do it. But now you just get a little stick of a computer and
Well, I
put it
thought
in a
Microsoft
HDMI
had a good product with their DVD. What was that called?
Yeah.
Their media server.
media-
But-
Yeah,
Windows
the
Media
Media
Center.
Center Edition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it worked really well with the Xbox. That was, to me, one of the best implementations. And then one year we were at Cedia, and there was like 10 companies that came out with standalone boxes that were essentially just a PC with the Media Center in it. And that lasted for about 30 minutes, and then it was gone. And I don't know why it didn't work, but and then they got rid of it in their software, which was kind of a bummer because it was a nice product.
I still do hook a computer to the television, but it's my laptop, and I just jack it into the front of the AV receiver
Yeah.
if I want to watch
It's-
something
it's-
that isn't available via streaming. If you know what I mean.
He keeps saying words that sound like they're like he's technologically savvy, but then everything that he says sounds like a Luddite. Like I love using
it's
the
very
USB
confusing,
port
isn't
on my car. I plug a USB stick on it in it. I'm like, what? Who does that? Aren't you
asked
just
what I
put
was
a phone
thankful
in like a
for.
normal
USB
person?
stick, yeah, from
who does
1994. That
It's really easy. Well, we started
Well, he's thankful
collecting
for the USB stick
MP3s.
because he's not using a floppy.
That's right.
That's right.
He doesn't have
Do
to.
you remember back in the day
gonna
when you
zip drive.
download MP3s off like FTP sites and off Napster? We started collecting MP3s in the 90s, and it continues to this day. So we have a gigantic collection of music, and just throwing some stuff on a stick and putting it in the car is kind of cool. Still kind of cool.
I don't think you know what cool means, but go on.
I'm a strange mix of old stuff and new stuff. I'm like the world's oldest millennial. I don't know what
hilarious.
age I am. It makes no sense.
Oh my God, Lee, you're killing me.
Tom, what's your regret or thing you would do over in your theater?
So, I mean, obviously surround backs were a huge mistake. I mean, there's no doubt about that. In every theater that I've had them in, they've always made things worse, including the one I'm currently in. And that's a jab at myself because I do talk about surround backs and often suggest that people don't need them, and Rob doesn't. So if you like surround backs, ask Rob a question, not me. But honestly, you guys have kind of taken a lot of the stuff I was thinking about, because there's been what Ara was talking about during that, there was that era of the Windows Media Center, and there was a bunch of HTPCs, home theater PCs that were being released, and they were uber expensive, and all they really were people who could put together a box and get the Windows Media Center on it and put an interface over the top of it and make sure everything worked together. Well, because the guys at Audioholics didn't want to review those because they were hard to review and it sucked, they said, "Hey, new guy, review this thing." And I was like, "Yay, I get to review stuff." I reviewed like 4 of those things, maybe 5, and they're hard to review because I'm the guy who you send the gear to, and it's like, "How come it does this?" They're like, "We've been testing this for 7 years and it's never done that for anybody." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm that guy." So it was always an excruciating process to get everything working, and single home theater PC review should have had a PS, and 3 months later it stopped working, because they were all that way, and that's why Rob, who does the Plex servers and does all that stuff in his theater, and he's been trying to get me to do it, and been encouraging me to for years, and I'm like, nah, I'm just not doing it, and it's because of that. But like Ara was saying, it's about the journey. I will say that my biggest regret, I think, if you want to talk about like expenditure of money, was in my previous home theater. I got like I went to a shop to go look for home theater seating, put together some stuff, got some ideas, found a style I liked, but they didn't have it in stock. Mm-hmm. So I just ordered it with my wife. My wife and I sat there, we picked it out, we picked out the shape we wanted, we picked out the leather that we wanted and everything else, and we got it, and it came in, and I swear this couch was built for basketball players. Like, my feet didn't touch the ground, and the headrest was like right at the crown of my head, right? So if I scooched down, I could be under the headrest, or I had to like sit super erect so that I could get my head on the headrest. It was the least comfortable couch I have ever owned, and it was just thousands of dollars that we spent on this thing, and I've never regretted anything more than that. So, advice: if you're going to buy some home theater seating, sit on it first. That's all I'm going to say.
100%.
Yep.
Well, DJ, have we left you any bones to pick over? Something that you regret or would have done different in your theater?
I can't believe I'm going last. Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody hit on this. Nobody's bought monster cables. Nobody's bought
I have not.
by-wire speaker wire that for like you put it into your amp and then it splits at the end, because that makes the sound better when you have a speaker that can be by-wired. It's still 1 amp. It just splits at the end for that cleaner sound. I did that. I spent all the money on monster cables. You had to have the best RCA cables, and now they're sitting in a box. But I think I can't believe nobody hit on that. You guys hit on that like every week. It's like,
no, we left the right answer for last. You got the right answer.
Yeah.
or you left it like the easiest answer for me. But I think my biggest regret, which is much like everybody said, I'm the bright side. I don't regret anything. It's like, because we learn from these mistakes. And my biggest learning experience came from me buying that Bose 5-channel system that it was the cube speakers that came with the nice ceiling mounts in them in my apartment. And I raved about these things. I didn't have and this is a family podcast, but I didn't have a bleeping clue what I was doing, what I was listening to, or anything. And the guy, I wish I could find him today. He owned a Laserdisc store, and he taught me pretty much everything I know or knew, and back in the 90s. And he was like, what do you got? And he's the one that turned me on to NHT, and he started telling me all about like impedance, frequency response, everything like that. And he goes, look at a Bose product. What is any of that? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Look it up. There isn't. It's all, proprietary design. That's all they care about. And don't get me wrong, they have good stuff for that, but it's not for us because you can't tune it. You can't. And I learned so much from that. Mm-hmm. And then when I went to my NHT speakers, which by the way, were like literally almost 10 times cheaper. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about Bose.
I believe it. Yep.
I wouldn't mind Bose if they were cheap, but that's
right.
That's the problem with Bose. It's not their performance; it's that you're paying for
crazy money. Yeah,
yeah.
So it's funny as you guys were talking about all the regrets. I was living through so many more because you're like Monster Cable. I'm like, yeah, dude, I bought so many cables I shouldn't have bought. And then you're talking about like the discs that you bought, and I kind of bet that HD DVD would win. I had an HD DVD player. I had a whole stack of HD DVD discs, and there's a regret right there.
Braden, I just got rid of my HD DVD player this year. I finally gave it up. I had an HD DVD player in the closet with a whole bunch of discs sitting on top of it, and I finally went, I'm just never going to watch this. I'm just never going to. And I had to give it up.
Guys, so. I invested in an extra external Xbox 360 HD DVD disc drive in case I need to back up something again. Gotta have one on hand.
Yeah,
I forgot about that thing.
HD
so
DVD
before we move on, what do you guys think a 6-foot monster cable that is 4K capable? Go for
it's not certified, I'll
guess.
tell you that much. But
$185.
Oh, that seems cheap. $365 just because of my kids been asking me.
I'm gonna go with $1, Bob.
I don't know, this seems like AudioQuest territory, so I'll say $200. That's what AudioQuest also charges.
All right, so the answer is $30.
Why?
And I think I think they just realized nobody's buying this stuff anymore. So, and then when I checked their website, cables are under legacy products. They're selling more stuff like headphones and that kind of stuff. So Monster pivoted. They realized nobody's spending the money. But the funny thing is, I think, Rob, you said AudioQuest. Mm-hmm. Some people are still trying to sell these speakers, these cables at very high prices. Yep. And I don't understand how anybody buys it.
Yep.
We're going to hit on that in a few minutes.
Well, we are starting to run long here, but we're not going to leave out the question that DJ has selected because, hey, he put this whole thing together. So, DJ, what would you like to ask the panel on behalf of one of your listeners?
All right. Graham C. Thanks to all my listeners that submitted questions. But this one here, we already hit on this a little bit, but Graham C. comes in with, what's your best theater story that makes you never want to go back besides COVID, i.e. crappy theater experiences that make you happy to have a, quote, home theater, end quote.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Who's kicking it off?
That's an easy one for me. This was when I was first getting really into home theater. I had my 5.0 system, and I had gone to a family reunion and I'm the second oldest of like 30 cousins. So I packed a bunch of my cousins into a van and we drove, instead of going to the local theater in whatever little town we were in, I drove an extra like hour to go to something that had like Dolby or DTS. This was years and years ago. So Dolby or DTS or one of those theaters. And we got there, we watched Air Force One with Harrison Ford. And we sat there and I watched this whole movie going, what is wrong with the sound in here? It sounds mono. I mean, we drove all this way, and I'm not lying. The very last scene, the last 2 minutes of the movie, suddenly somebody went up into the booth and went, oh, this doesn't sound right. And they flipped a switch, and suddenly all the speakers came on, and the bass started rumbling, and I was like, so angry. I've never been. I walked out, and I started like yelling. I'm like, what happened with the sound? What are you doing? They're like, well, if you didn't have a good experience, we can give you a ticket to come back. I'm like, I live in California. I'm like in Kentucky. When am I coming back? I was so mad. But yes, that was my big experience that really made me so happy once I finally got a proper home theater.
Maybe I'll go next. Mine is seeing Pacific Rim in IMAX, and thankfully in the Vancouver area, I have 2 genuine IMAX theaters. One of them was one of the earlier ones in North America, so they have the full film version of IMAX. If you want to see it, you get the genuine tall image that even some of the digital IMAX theaters don't provide these days. But I was in there watching Pacific Rim. Now, I typically try to sit in not the very back row because I want to have some room behind me, but IMAX being so huge and so loud, I'll usually go 2 rows are behind me. I'm in the 3rd from the back. Well, there was a woman and her boyfriend or husband or whatever sitting in the back row behind me, and every time the dog came on screen in Pacific Rim, she squealed loud enough that in IMAX in Pacific Rim, everybody could hear her squealing because there was a dog on screen. And that's just home theater.
Broke the immersion for you, Rob?
Not dealing with that. Not dealing with the person who, it's a dog. I like dogs. I like dogs a lot. You don't have to squeal every time one is visible.
I don't know. They're awful cute.
Yeah. Lee, what's
Maybe
yours?
I'll go next?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me go next. Okay, I started hating theaters like back in the 90s. I remember watching Saving Private Ryan. I can't remember which year that was. And right before a pivotal scene toward the end, the film literally melted and disappeared from the screen. I kid you not. Right toward the end, we had to wait a week to finish the movie before we could get back to the theater. Melted, went away. And then...
Luckily, that's
also,
fairly short.
Yes. And then also, when was it, 97, 98, Titanic. Went to see Titanic.
Well, there's your problem right there.
Yes. Well, you go where people want to go. And it's an okay movie, I suppose. But the whole movie, it was tilted a few degrees to one side. So no, it was listing to one side the whole time. Even before it hit the iceberg, it was listing to one. Yes. And then just as Rose is letting go of Jack's hand and he goes into the water, somebody had the deadliest silent gas. And the rest of the movie was ruined. And we're giggling while the guy's dying and going in the water. And we're all just like retching. So yeah. I've hated theaters for a long, long time. Always
could have led with that one.
Oh, man. All right, DJ, what's your story here on this one?
Really, really quick. Endgame. Seeing Endgame. Maybe this is what puts me on to Ara Braden's. Like, all right, I'm done with theaters. But in our local theater, you can put the seats up. Put your feet up, relax. And I don't. I like to sit upright so I get the surround speakers in my ears and everything. So I'm sitting upright. The guy next to me puts his seat up, put his feet up, kicks his shoes off, barefoot, right next to me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, I'm like, it says no, you can't just wear them in. You need, and it was disgusting. It was absolutely ruined the movie. Had to see it 3 more times in the theater to make up for it.
Oh, hey, now you could go in there and someone can be like, hey, yeah, I've got a mask. Here, it's in my hand.
Right.
I just want to see them. Ugh. See bare feet while you're trying to watch a movie and they're sticking up in front of your... Right.
Well, Braden, what's your tale?
Oh, I've got so many. So I've got one like that, DJ, where you know how people will like to put their feet up sort of on either side of your seat if they're sitting in the row behind you? I had one that was bare feet. Right, and then how do you like
worse.
get the foot out of there? Right, like do you kind of elbow it? You don't want to touch it, right? Like how do you get rid of that foot?
You take a piece of ice out of your drink and just kind of draw on their foot with it. That'll end it right there.
So I had that one.
Oh man,
I had one where inevitably, no matter when I go to the movie, even if we do the reserved seats, I end up sitting in front of the birthday party, which like a dozen 12-year-old boys that aren't watching the movie. They're just cracking jokes and farting and pulling each other's finger and stuff. I think the worst theater experience I've ever had though was having to go sit through Avatar in 3D. And the movie itself, I didn't enjoy. Being in 3D and not being able to turn off the 3D and just being stuck there watching Avatar in 3D is like, man, I could have got up and left. If my kids wanted to watch it, that's fine. You watch this movie. If it's on at home, I'm just going to walk out or fall asleep or whatever. But I'm stuck there watching Avatar in 3D. It was miserable.
Don't worry,
so
Braden. The sequels are not just Avatar in 3D. They're also going to be in high frame rate. That'll solve everything for you.
I think Braden and I are soulmates, I think.
Well, Ara, can you bring us home? What's been your theater story that makes you so glad you have a home theater instead?
Sure, nothing as interesting as your guys, but it was when I went to take my daughters to see Harry Potter. They were very young at the time. It was, I think, 2000. And when I paid for the 4 tickets and popcorn and other things at the snack bar, it cost me $75. And this was 2000. And I wasn't making nearly as much as money as I made recently. But it was at that point I said, I think we can do better at home.
Yeah.
That is the worst, though. You go and pay. I got 5 kids, so I did it to myself. But I go and drop over $100 to go watch a movie, and you're leaving going, I just paid $100 to watch that.
Yeah,
that was.
I've only got 3 kids, and I can't get out of there for less than $100. I don't know how you're doing it. I mean,
it does make $30 for Mulan seem like quite the deal when you put it in that.
Yeah,
right.
That's exactly what we ended up looking at it. $30 divided by 4. Not that I made my kids pay. They're older now, but they still live with me. But it's less than $15 a person.
Yeah.
And we had better food. And as I think Tom said, you can hit pause when it was time to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
So DJ had an idea. He has a segment in mind to wrap this all up, and it's a very appropriate segment. It's what we're thankful for about podcasts, because that's what's brought us all together. And he had something to share in mind. So DJ, take it away.
So what for everybody go around, like what are you thankful for podcasts and in general, or how it's affected society or affected you? And I have a couple of examples. As one, I'm sitting here tonight with you guys, and a year ago I'm a listener. So like Lee started the show off saying, it's like watching Ara and Braden for the first time. It's like I'm in the front row, but I'm sitting with you guys. So that to me is amazing. Because it's not just you guys, but it's that you guys have been, to me, so welcoming, right? And it's I reached out to each and every one of you, and everybody was like, yeah, of course, why not? There's no, Tom has said it so many times, there's no competition, because our listeners, the podcast listener, is looking for more content of a subject, whatever the subject is, right? And it's, so the better podcasts out there are looking to share their content with other podcasts to grow. And you guys have been obviously awesome to me. I've only just a year, and here I am sitting with all of you guys, and it's been amazing. But I would say, aside from myself alone, getting back to that cables thing and how Ara looked up Monster Cable, seriously, I think podcasting is what changed that pricing. Because the knowledge that you guys bring it's spreading, and people are realizing from listening to if you care enough about your systems and stuff, you're now realizing that you don't need to spend the money. Where we all spent the money because we cared so much about our system, we thought money means quality, right? So we just bought the best cable we could. But it's you guys' podcasts and other podcasts as well, educating people on where to put the money, and it's brought the market down. We all thought, like when Ara looked up Monster, we thought it was going to be a crazy price. You guys have affected Monster. I mean, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
I'd give some
Dr.
credit
Dre
to
a little bit.
Monoprice for having affected Monster.
I think I'd give
but
the bulk of the credit to Monoprice.
No, I wouldn't, because you know why? I'll tell you why. Because the consumer would see the price of Monoprice and Monster and think Monster was better because it costs more money.
Too good to be true.
That's true.
It's if you're uninformed, you don't know why would you buy Monoprice? It's so cheap. It can't be good. It's cheap.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
but it's your education is great.
I'll certainly say for a podcast for me that the format of AV Rant is answering questions, but in order to do that, you gotta research, you gotta be on top of things, and I, Tom and I always say the two of us, we'd be talking to each other every week about home theater stuff anyway, just casually. If we weren't recording it and no one were listening, we're just into it, we're friends. It's a fun thing to do. It's a hobby, but having the podcast is what motivates me to stay right on the cutting edge of things as much as I'm able to. It motivates me to read manuals for products that I would not otherwise read. And, tidbits fall out there that I wouldn't have found otherwise. So, I'm thankful for that because it encourages and keeps the interest in this topic going. I might have started to lose interest or not just had it to the exact same degree that we have. And I've podcasting to thank for that. So I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah, Braden and I said the same thing. This is something that we would normally talk about anyway. And Braden, do you remember when we were both working at the same company? You came to my office because I had mentioned I had listened to the Daily Source Code by Adam Curry. And I was, being a software developer, I was looking at the whole mechanism, and Braden and I were talking about it. And I think I just threw out there, we should do something on home theater because we both worked for Sony Pictures back in the day. And he went away. About an hour later, he comes into my office and he says, let's do it. And that was it. We did it. And we've worked at different companies, but we've always stayed in touch. And Braden, one of my closest friends, I've known probably only one other friend longer than you, but I appreciate Braden and the listeners, you guys as well. There was a time, Tom, remember we did a AV at
After
night
dark?
or something like that?
AV After
Dark.
Dark,
yeah.
And at the time, our lives were very busy. We couldn't keep that going, but it was a lot of fun too. The community is great. And as you said, Rob, it was DJ, there's no competition. Our listeners, there's a lot of crossover. We all do different things, and we try to help each other out. So thankful for all you guys.
Yeah, and I'd echo those same kind of sentiments, Ara, is that the podcast has allowed us to stay, obviously Ara and I connected, but us to be connected to, Ara, you and I met when we were both working at Sony Pictures. We were in the theater kind of AV industry.
Yeah.
And since we've moved on to other industries, with the podcast, have been able to stay connected with friends that we have that are still at DTS and Dolby and other places. And then be able to tap into that sort of community of people who are just as weird and crazy about home theater as we are. That when you're out there hanging out, walking through the mall or hanging out at work, it's rare to find someone who's as much of a home theater geek as those of us on this show. But with the podcast, we all get to stay connected and we get to kind of enjoy each other and learn from each other and grow from each other and really create like a community that, without a podcast, there'd be no way to do it. So I've really enjoyed that part of it.
Here, I'll tell you what I love about podcasts. Two things. One, it improved my health. Podcasts did, because back in the 2000s I started eating better, and then later in the 2000s I started exercising, and I found that when I exercised I got bored with the music. I felt too alone. If you're outside riding a bike or jogging or trying to lift weights, it's boring for me. I'm kind of a social creature, and so having podcasts, it just dawned on me one day sometime around 2008, maybe 2009. I'm like, shouldn't there be podcasts about, I like electronics, let's see what people are doing, right? And so I went out and found, well, here they are. I'm talking to the people I found. So that's very cool. And it, I don't know, it just made all that kind of activity better, and I got healthier, and it works, by the way. Eating right and exercising is a great thing. And also radio, I used to do radio, and I kind of missed them good old days, both for my own show I used to do, and just because radio's so different now. There used to be a plethora of different personalities you could listen to, and I miss the different personalities and individuals. Now there's just like, one DJ will be on 20 or 50 stations in a bunch of different cities, and he's not live, and there's a handful of shows that are carried nationally, and it's just tremendously boring. And podcasts have moved into that, and now it can be on topics you want, and there's just endless personalities. And I'll almost listen to anything topic-wise if I just like the people. So I just love all that about podcasts. I think it's one of the biggest changes to how we consume information in, I don't know, many years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's like on-demand radio, basically, right?
Yeah, it really is. Any topic you want.
So for me, it's very hard to go last in this particular segment since we're all kind of thankful for the same sort of thing. I'm thankful for my community, the community of AV Rant listeners that reach out to us every week asking us questions. Unlike just about everybody else who started in podcasting because they loved podcasting, I was never really one that liked podcasts all that much when I started this. I was suggested to start this by Clint DeBoer, who was the editor-in-chief at Audioholics at the time. Thought it would be a good idea. Thought I had a good voice for it, perfect face for podcasting, as you can all see right here. So he thought that this would be a good fit. And we did all sorts of different things. I started off with a couple of different female co-hosts, and we did the more news sort of stuff for a long time. And
oh my God, I remember that. I completely forgot all about
that's
that.
right.
I remember Dina.
Oh my God.
Dina, and then Liz.
Yeah.
So and then Rob came in. So it's like
I scared all the women away. That's not a great legacy to have on that front. There, yeah.
Not the best wingman. I'm just going to let you guys know, if you're ever in a bar, just stay on the other side. Keep Rob on the one side, and you go to the other side.
Oh, come
Are you
on.
talking the bar or the country?
Well, I mean,
Border, man. The
That's
border.
kind of how it
he's
worked.
he's up in British Columbia, and I'm in Florida. That should tell you something right
you
there.
can't be any further away.
For a while, I was in Australia, so I was really trying to get away at that point. But it's been great to have a community to reach out to, and people that are constant listeners, and even like this last a couple, I guess when this podcast goes live a couple of weeks ago, we had a listener who hadn't listened in a while because he got his theater sorted out and didn't really need our help anymore. But he came back, because he kind of missed our stories and hearing our voices and that sort of thing. And that just reminds me that it's all of our podcasts are more than just about AV and about home theater. We are, keeping the community together, keeping the community alive, giving people, a voice that maybe they're looking for information. Maybe they're just saying, "Hey, this is a 2-hour podcast. I bet I can fall asleep to this," and they're probably right. And that would be perfect.
And if you're still awake now, congratulations.
No
Congratulations,
kidding.
you
Yeah,
win.
we have blown through every barrier of times for any of our podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and like I said at the very beginning, I spent 8 years writing in the AV industry, and then that went away, and I started doing other work, and I've been doing a lot of consulting and stuff like that. But I have a little announcement to make.
Oh, here we go.
All right, I've partnered again with my good friend Clint DeBoer, who's the former editor-in-chief of Audioholics, who's now the editor-in-chief of Tool Review magazine. He has been, for a long time, he had a bunch of content that was on a different website that was his, that he couldn't get access to. Well, he finally got access to it, and he's starting a new AV website, and he's asked me to be editor-in-chief of that website. So it's called avgadgets.com. It's live now. By the time you're hearing this on the podcast on Thanksgiving Day, I will hopefully have spent the last 2.5-3 weeks getting as much content up there as I possibly can. So I'm writing again in the AV industry. I'm very excited about it, and I ask you guys to all come over and take a look and see what kind of mischief I can get into, because if my interactions with NAD are any indication, there's going to be some companies that don't like me after I start writing about their stuff. But we will. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So
That's
AV
awesome.
Gadgets.
Congrats, man. That's
Right
really
on.
cool.
You
Thank
got to
you,
give
guys.
that website one more time, Tom. Where can they find that?
It's be avgadgets.com. avgadgets.com. All one
Be in
word.
the show notes, right, Rob?
Yeah, it'll be. in
It
the
sure
show notes.
will. It will absolutely be in the show notes, of course.
That's awesome.
I will say one thing that I'm very thankful for on this particular episode, and it's nothing that any of us could honestly control, but it's very helpful that you got 6 gentlemen around here, all speaking sometimes over each other on this podcast, but we all have unique sounding timbres to our voices that make us, as a listener, you can tell who is who. There are some podcasts I listen to, I enjoy them very much, but sometimes the 2 or 3 hosts have very similar voices, and even after multiple episodes, I can't tell which one of them is speaking. So that worked out swimmingly well for all of us. So look, as much as I would assume that we have a lot of crossover listeners between our 3 podcasts, there's definitely the chance that some people are hearing some of us for the first time. So how can people get in touch with each of us? We want to make sure they have a way of being able to reach out and find our podcasts, find our websites, find our contact info. So DJ, how can people find you at the Brightside Home Theater Podcast?
All right. This timbre is DJ from Brightside Home Theater. You can find me on Twitter at BrightsideHT. You can email me at brightsidehometheater@gmail.com. Or you could just go to the website, brightsidehometheater.com, and everything's there. All the links to anything, my podcasts, stuff like that.
All right. Tom, you're used to giving out our contact info. How the heck do people find AV Rant?
Well, AV Rant is the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to...
Nice.
Nice. I was
awesome.
like, wait a second.
This is what happens when we go over 2 hours, Tom.
I know, I
It
get
starts
tired.
glitching.
It's very
Max
tired.
Headroom.
Live.
You were
So
doing
it's
so good.
avrant.com is our website. You can leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. YouTube.com/AVRant for our out of lip sync videos.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can catch all those. You can want to contact Rob directly. He's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom.
And our pinch hitter, Lee, can be found as well. Lee, where can folks find you?
Yes, this timbre is Lee Overstreet, who used to be a DJ. Yeah, you can find me at Lee Overtweet
I told you he
on
likes puns.
Twitter.
He
Told
does
ya.
like
I
puns.
do. Lee Overtweet. Get it? I'm so damn clever. And if you can follow the logic on that pun, you can find me on Instagram as well if you just kind of think it out.
And
But, yeah, find me there.
the guys who started this whole podcast thing, we all kind of followed in their footsteps. The HT guys, where can folks find you?
So
Well, you can find.
there you go.
Ahead,
I
Braden.
think you should do it, man. Because
No, I didn't mean to step on your feet there. You go do
no,
it.
that's funny. So I'll do the first half. You do the second half. How about that?
They are
Sorry,
the old
sounds
married
good.
couple.
Yeah,
They really
we
are.
Right? I mean, if we don't plan these
Never-
things ahead of time, we're like
Yeah.
all over the place, and and I miss punchlines. All right, so the easiest place to go for all of our content is just go to the website htguys.com. It hasn't changed in years and years and years, and that's the reason that we call the show HT Guys. It's the HDTV and Home Theater Podcast. We talk about everything high def, home theater, a little bit of home automation, and just try to have fun with it. We're not funny, but we try to have fun. And then you can send us email, htguys@htguys.com. And Ara, since you are the one who's super active on social media, you want to talk about our social contact info?
So you can find me on Twitter at HDTV Podcast. Braden is at Braden Russell. I do some woodworking that is available on Instagram. That's at OC Reclaimed Treasures. And there I do build some speakers. In fact, by the time you've listened to this, I've put out a video on the latest ones that I built. So if you got a chance, go over to YouTube, and we are the HT Guys there. I put up some videos from time to time. And, did you say Patreon, Braden?
No, but that's at the website. I figured people just go to the website.
Yeah,
and,
patreon.com/HDTV Podcast.
This has been a treat for me, if no one else, but I'm pretty sure that all of us agree that we enjoyed it. I think all of us owe a big thank you to DJ for being the spearhead of this, really wanting, round of applause there for DJ, sir. Thank
Hey,
you very
DJ,
much.
thanks.
And I am 100% certain that we are all exceedingly thankful and grateful to all of our listeners. If we don't have listeners, what is a podcast for? It's tremendous. The community that Braden and Ara and Tom and Lee and DJ and I have all spoken about. It's why we do this. It's wonderful, and we thank all of you so much for listening. This has been a wonderful experience. I do hope that we get to do it again. We do have to say though that for now the multiverses are breaking apart. Come next week, we'll be back to individual episodes, but this has been Thankful on Infinite Podcasts. It has been our massive crossover event. We really hope that you enjoy it, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And so now it's time to close out the show. Braden, take it away.
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. Now stay in and listen to something.
Go watch some HDTV.
And go push play.
And we'll see you next Thanksgiving.
I think we might.
Bye-bye. I might have been
Looks
a
good.
hair behind.
That's all
Had a
right.
twitch.
Lee.
Don't
Sorry, I'll
worry.
figure it
The
out.
lip sync will be superior. DJ and I guarantee it.
That's right.
Oh yeah, this video.
Are you guys doing video?
I'm recording the Zoom video. Yeah.
Let's see
Just
what
in case.
happens.
All right, so then we
Yeah.
should all just start moving our lips and then not making any sound to see what happens.
No, just talk.
Wonderful.
Everybody
Sorry,
talk
am
like
I
this.
supposed to put on pants? I'm a little confused.
Nope.
I didn't realize we were recording
Pants
video.
not
Pants
required.
optional.